Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I woke up in a hospital bed, disoriented and unsure of how I had ended up there. Pain radiated from my right arm, shoulder, and left side, and my entire body ached. My name is Henry Colton, and I was 41 years old when I found myself in this tangled situation. As my surroundings began to come into focus, I tried to piece together the events that had landed me here. Growing up, my life revolved around the pursuit of financial stability. My family didn't have much, but it wasn't until high school that I realized just how little we actually had. The absence of even the simplest luxuries became glaringly obvious. By the time I was 14, I had taken it upon myself to cover my own expenses, clothes, school supplies, and anything extra I wanted. I hustled constantly, taking on any job I could find. For 2 summers, I worked on the back of a gypsy garbage truck. I also cleaned classrooms after school, washed dishes at a local diner, and eventually saved up enough money to buy my own car and pay for its insurance once I got my license. Money mattered to me, but I wasn't frivolous with it. I treated myself occasionally to small indulgences, a burger, a candy bar, but only sparingly and never without thought. I was a very good student and had received many full scholarships offers. I chose the University of Michigan and graduated with dual degrees in electrical engineering and electronic design. I invented and patented an improved miniature microphone, a very small video camera, and several different sound and motion detector alarms. I licensed some of those patents, and with the money, I started a security equipment manufacturing company. I met Clara Wesley at a company function where my company hosted our customers and potential customers. I was and am founder and COO of Hardwired Security Incorporated, a small but significant home security company. We do not actually wire or monitor homes, but we invent, design, and produce the gadgets needed. In spite of our name, most of our products were Wi-Fi and Bluetooth compatible and had battery backup so they would continue to work if the power failed for any reason. I was making a decent salary when I met Clara, but it wasn't in the stratosphere because I was rolling 90% of the after-expenses profit back into the company. I was still very well paid for a 26-year-old electronics geek of that time. Clara was with her boss Walter Williams, the purchasing agent for Williams Home Safety Company. His daddy was the big cheese, but Walter and I had a good professional relationship. He was all business when it was about business. When not doing business, he was an all-out skirt chaser. He was a couple of years older than me, but was on wife number 3. He introduced his assistant Clara to me. Then he introduced me to her. Of course, he had to add that I was COO, shareholder, and single. Clara took on an almost acquisitive look as she tried to make small talk. I dismissed her interest immediately by saying, "What Walter said is true, but what he failed to say is that I only get a salary that is just a little more than what my highest paid engineer gets. I am not rich by any means, just lucky with some of my inventions. I also have some of the smartest electronics geeks in the country working for my company." She stared at me for a few seconds and then said, "I'm sorry. My surprise at your age overcame my polite upbringing. I was just very impressed that someone our age was able to own and run such an important company. Our company uses more products from your plants than all of the other suppliers combined." We talked business for a few more minutes, and I excused myself to mingle with the guests. I spent about 25 minutes walking around and talking to the various people before the food and soft drinks were brought out and the buffet was set up. As my guests were getting their food and drinks, I watched and saw Clara had kept moving to the rear of the line. At the same time, she was sideways watching me. If I had thought about it, I would have realized that she was stalking me to get close. I did not have a lot of experience with women, as I was mostly a nose-to-the-grindstone person. Clara saw her target, and I never knew what the license number of the truck that was Clara Wesley. I didn't call her, she called me. Where she got my personal phone number from I never did find out. We dated for more than a year, and she was getting more aggressive. It was putting me off, so I told her that I didn't want to see her outside of business anymore. Well, that worked for about 2 months, and then she started to show up wherever I was when not at work. She joined my church. She managed to get invited to family dinners, even though I never introduced her to my family. It was so bad I told my parents that if she was at another family function, it would be the last one I was at. Well, that seemed to cool her pursuit off. But when she wasn't around, I felt something was missing. I knew what it was, but I wasn't about to start up with her again without some serious and unbreakable ground rules. After about 3 months, I called Clara and we talked. She was pleasant, but told me she was glad she wasn't seeing me anymore because she started dating Walter. I had heard that he had gotten dumped by Mrs. Matthews number 3. It seems, at least according to Clara, that Walter was not the one she wanted. Well, so much for new ground rules. I ended the call. I then took stock of my life. I decided to cut back on the 60-hour work weeks, the 7-day work weeks, and the obsession of work. It took about a month of normal work weeks when I discovered that I had a lot more energy and I was better focused at work. The most important improvement I made was I was able to leave work at the office. With my new time and energy, I decided to take dance lessons. I always envied the guys who never seemed to be off their feet at weddings and dances that I attended. It was enlightening and fun, as well as ego-boosting. I discovered a love of country dances, especially line dances. I also started to go out to a little country music dance hall that was on the edge of town. The dance floor would be crowded if more than 8 couples were on it, but when line dances were called, we made 3 rows, and the inside row alternated face one of the outside rows. It was great fun. Then about 6 months after the phone call, I was at a cousin's wedding, and Clara was there with a different guy. Apparently, Walter was no more. As I was part of the wedding party, there was no way Clara could not miss the fact that I was there. She left her date and asked to talk to me. I was a little dubious, but I also never disliked her, just her tactics. I told her she had to introduce me to her date, and I would ask him to excuse us for about 15 minutes. She agreed. She did. He didn't, and left the reception without her. We talked and danced for the rest of the party. I took her home and left before she could invite me in. I was afraid to start something up again. Well, about 3 days later, I got a letter from her at my office. Henry, I know that I messed up before by being too aggressive. I would like to start dating you again. I will do my best to let us proceed at a rate of intimacy that you are comfortable with. I know that I told you that Mrs. Walter III told him he was not the one. I was the real reason they broke up. She caught us at a motel when he was supposedly at a business conference in Seattle. His dad fired him and removed him from all of the ownership of the company. His younger brother Tom will now be the heir apparent. I know I have come across as aggressive. I apologize for that. I like you, and I was pushing for more because I think I was beginning to love you. To put your mind at ease, I will not pursue you after you read this letter. That does not mean that I don't hope you will call me to go out together again. Clara. Well, I thought about it for 3 months, and on a Wednesday, I called and asked her to dinner for the coming Friday. I thought that would be a good restarting point. It was. We started dating, and after about 6 weeks we were sexual intimate. That woman knew more ways to screw than I ever heard or read about. I thought guys were 60-second wonders. Clara was just what a fragile romantic ego like I had needed. We dated for about a year, and I asked her to marry me. She jumped into my arms and chanted yes, yes, yes. We were planning the wedding when my mother strongly recommended that I should protect my assets with a prenuptial agreement. I had my attorney drew up an agreement that made sure that my trust would not be vulnerable in case of a divorce. He also recommended that I place all of the patents in the ownership of the trust. That would mean that the income from them would also be protected. Well, I was surprised that Clara did not make a fuss about the prenup. She did take it to her attorney and then signed with only one change. She and her attorney added a strict adultery clause. I signed the addendum. The wedding was small, but the reception was almost a circus. Most of the people from my company and from Williams Home Security were there. As it was a warm Saturday afternoon, and we had rented a pavilion and grounds from a local church camp, it was a mob scene, but all in all, very well-behaved mob. Clara was mingling with our guests when I saw Walter take hold of her arm and try to lead her away. He must have sensed that I was watching because he started to look around for me. As soon as he saw me, he let go of her arm as if it was on fire. I headed over toward them, as Clara had not seen Walter's face. I only caught the last words from Clara. I told you we were done when you cheated on me. I love my husband, and I never want to be near you again. Walter took off, and a few minutes later, I saw his car driving off. At the time, I was extremely angry with a man I thought was my friend. He was hitting on my wife on my wedding day for crying out loud. I was pleasantly surprised when Clara filed a sexual harassment complaint against Walter. It didn't go anywhere, because the complaint cited the reception as when and where it happened and Walter no longer worked for the company. Clara quit, and we basically blew the incident off as out of our control. Clara found a new job, as my administrative assistant. My past assistant moved to a different state to be with her new chump of the month, and she didn't even pick up her last paycheck. I was almost 30 when we married, and Clara wanted to start a family. I was 33 when Sam was born, and I was a proud papa. Clara decided to be a full-time mom, and while we tried for the next 4 years, we never had another child. I had a vasectomy when we had been married for 6 years, and so there would be no more kids. Clara went back to work when Sam started 2nd grade. She found a job with a local company as an administrative assistant to the plant manager. Things were great until 6 months or so before I woke up in the hospital. Clara had started making snide little digs about me, not getting my share of the profits from the company. That bitching stopped when I started to present her with bills for half of the monthly expenses. Half was more than her entire take-home pay. Then she started to withhold any affection. No hugs, no kisses, and definitely no sex. I moved into the guest room. Then came the clincher. I overheard her talking on her phone to someone named Thomas. I can't yet. I needed to figure a way to get him to divorce me or die. I don't want him to die, but if he did, I would have it all instead of the half I would get in a divorce. Anyway, I can't do anything with you away from work until either of those happen. Then she turned around and saw me. She immediately ended the call and looked extremely guilty. The only Thomas the First knew was a department manager at the plant. I didn't say anything at the time because Sam was near. After he went to bed, I grabbed Clara, not too gently, by the arm and dragged her into the living room. I didn't say anything about the phone call. I just started by saying, I know and you know that you have been a cold and heartless bitch for almost 6 months. I am telling you right now that it stops. If I want sex, you will drop your panties immediately and grab your ankles. If I insist, you will contribute to the family finances up to 75% of your take-home. If you make one more uncalled for snide remark or insult, you are out the door. Do you understand? By the time I finished, I was shouting. I was in control, and my rage was tamped down, but I needed to sound outraged. Clara looked at me like I had grown horns. She started to say something, but I interrupted her. One more insult, angry tirade against me, or a denial of sex and you are gone. My company owns this house, and I will burn it to the ground before you can get it in a divorce. Is a divorce what you want? She just crumbled off the couch and laid on the floor crying. I got up and went into the guest room and started moving my stuff back in the master. Clara was still on the floor when I was done, but she had fallen asleep. I covered her up and went to bed, locking the bedroom door. The next day after Clara went to work, I placed bugs all through the house and had her car bugged by one of my techs. We manufactured the security equipment, but we also knew how and where to use it. That night, a very contrite Clara came home from work and made dinner for the first time in over a month. She also gave me a look of almost respect, tinged with fear. I didn't want fear. I wanted my loving wife back. It was not to be. I had a few more plans up my sleeve. I stayed up after she went to bed and loaded her phone with the recorder app so all of her calls were recorded and cloned to me. I went to bed and a tearful Clara asked if I wanted to make love. I told her no, very abruptly. She rolled away from me and started to silently cry. I didn't ever make love to her again. Well, Thomas was quite the naughty boy. He called Clara on her cell while they were both working and the two of them talked of finding a way to get my money in my company. The plot suggestions started out bizarre, and gradually over a 2-week period got down to some serious planning. I was going to be killed in a mugging, and the mugging was going to look like random street violence. I hadn't been idle while this was going on. I moved all of our bank money and contents of the safe deposit box to a different bank with only my signature on it. I changed the beneficiary of my insurance policy to Sam with the proceeds to be held in trust until he started college or turned 21. I changed the beneficiary of the trust to Sam with the same provision and restrictions. Then I did something that saved my life. I bought the best undershirt body armor that was on the market. It was not just designed to reduce the chance of dying from a gunshot wound to the torso, but also was designed to protect against knife wounds. My purchase of the body armor was noticed by the police, and a detective showed up at my work and questioned me about my reason. I played the recording of the plan for him, and he told me I had a good reason. Then he said, "We really can't do anything about the plot because we can't use the evidence you have collected. That being said, we will keep a watch on you during your drives to work and back. I know that isn't much help, but it is all we can legally do until an attempt is made." So, 3 days after the detective's visit, I hear him in the hospital. The vest prevented the bullets from killing me, but I did receive 2 broken ribs, and when I fell down, I managed to break my ankle and knock myself out. I did take a bullet in the arm. My police escort caught Thomas Grayson as he was trying to flee the scene. When they interrogated him, he couldn't wait to give up Clara. It seems that they had been approached by Walter Williams about buying my company. He knew about their affair, and they were offered a price they didn't ignore. All 3 of them were arrested while I lay unconscious in the hospital. Each was held on a $2.5 million bond, an amount none of them could manage to post. Once I was discharged, I made some big changes. I sold my company but held on to the patents, ensuring my hard work wouldn't go to waste. Sam and I relocated to Alabama, where I filed for divorce from Clara. Because her actions were part of a criminal plot to claim my estate, she walked away with nothing. The trio of conspirators was found guilty of attempted murder and received lengthy prison sentences. Justice was served, but the experience left its scars. Sam, with the energy and optimism of youth, is determined to play matchmaker, constantly trying to set me up with the single moms of his friends. But for now, I'm not ready to re-enter the world of dating or romance. I've started fresh with a new career, working as a systems installer and supervisor for a statewide home security company. It's fulfilling, and I'm excited to tinker with some ideas for new gadgets. Life goes on, and so do I. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
I despised the regular gatherings at the county club every few weeks. It felt like there were countless excuses for hosting some frivolous party where a bunch of wealthy individuals could indulge in their egos. While my wife Sandra eagerly anticipated these events, unfortunately, over the past year or so, her drinking had escalated, leading to moments where she embarrassed herself or me. Sandra and I had been married for 24 years and had 3 college-aged children. We first met while I was pursuing my MBA, and we hit it off immediately. Our relationship began to cool off about a decade ago, and I assumed it was a natural progression. Although I wished for more affection and closeness, I hesitated to push the issue and resigned myself to the idea that our future together might lack romance. Despite this, I had a fulfilling career and earned a substantial income that comfortably supported our family, even with the financial strain of putting our kids through college. Sandra didn't work, preferring to focus on community service and social engagements. Her lifestyle was sustained by my income, which necessitated financial stability. Despite her dedication to upkeep, I noticed she maintained her appearance well, likely due to frequent trips to the spa and salon. Meanwhile, I considered myself average, sporting a slight paunch and graying hair, though I dressed sharply thanks to the demands of my job and my wife's penchant for shopping. I excelled at my job, but deep down I wasn't content. I yearned for something different, something fulfilling that didn't hinge on its paycheck. Additionally, I craved a change of scenery. Our house felt too large for just the 2 of us, and I loathed the expenses and time required to maintain it. Yet my wife adamantly dismissed any discussion of such radical ideas. She was enamored with her grand residence, the country club scene, and her affluent circle of friends. During one such social gathering, I meandered through the club, engaging in trivial conversations, feeling detached. As the night wore on, I lingered over my final drink while Sandra seemed to be ramping up her drinking. Her excessive indulgence was evident, particularly as she conversed with a group of local ladies. Approaching the scene, I overheard their discussion veering toward lovemaking topics, prompting me to retreat discreetly. Just as I was about to leave, Sandra's voice rang out louder than usual. Hell, if it wasn't for Todd Mitchell, I would never have had any good lovemaking in my lifetime, she exclaimed, oblivious to my presence. The sudden hush that fell over the group indicated they had noticed me nearby. Caught off guard, Sandra turned to see me, her judgment clouded by the drinks. Robert, I didn't realize you were here. You weren't meant to hear that, darling. I apologize. My mistake. She followed with a few tipsy giggles reminiscent of a young girl. The nearby ladies seemed unsure how to respond. Some quietly departed, while the rest remained silent. Sandra shot me a playful smirk, suggesting mischief. Setting my glass down, I exited the room and the club at a leisurely pace. Instead of heading home, I made my way to the airport and within 30 minutes, boarded a commuter flight to Reno. I found Reno much more appealing than Las Vegas, shedding light on my relationship with Sandra. During my time in Reno, I gained insights that had previously eluded me. A weekend there promised further clarity. I switched off my cell phone and easily secured a room at one of the casinos, opening an account with $20,000 and swiftly earning a complimentary room. One interesting aspect of casino accounts is their exemption from federal regulations. No reports are mandated to the government for deposits. While substantial winnings must be reported, deposited funds remain untraceable. Though not particularly interested in gambling, I admired their banking system. When I woke up Saturday at noon, I pondered my circumstances over a burger and fries. Reno appealed to me, its comfortable climate due to high altitude, gaming scene, and proximity to various amenities. Taking a stroll by the Truckee River, I reflected on failed marriages. While not contemplating a Reno divorce, I entertained the idea of tossing my ring into the riverbed someday. As I made my way back to the hotel casino, I noticed a real estate office adorned with various pictures in the front display window. Suddenly, the idea of owning a condo in Reno seemed sensible. Spending an hour in the office and another 2 driving around, I stumbled upon a small furnished unit that appealed to me. However, purchasing it while married posed a challenge. Fortunately, I arranged a discreet lease-to-buy agreement with a substantial deposit, a concept I initiated and the seller embraced. Taking charge of the family finances early in my marriage proved to be one of my best decisions. Sandra lacked financial acumen, content to leave bill payments to me while enjoying spending. That evening, I treated myself to a delightful sushi dinner. Before retiring for the night, I deposited an additional $10,000 from my Visa card into the casino fund, despite the detested cash advance fee, a sacrifice I deemed worthwhile. The next morning, I rose early and savored breakfast at the casino restaurant, relishing eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. While leisurely sipping my second cup of coffee, I noticed my waitress sporting a noticeable black eye. Despite her attempt to conceal it, her efforts were futile. She appeared to be a pleasant woman in her mid-40s, but her eagerness seemed slightly forced, suggesting she was new to the job. Although lacking the finesse of a seasoned waitress, her determination to excel impressed me. "Your name tag says Donna. Is that your real name?" I inquired. "No, my name is Dora, but Donna was the closest tag they had," she replied. "Well, Dora, I'll take another cup of coffee, and I promise a generous tip if you share the story behind the black eye." "Why don't I pour you a refill, and you can leave a smaller tip while I overlook your question," she countered. "Fair enough. It was impolite of me to pry," I conceded. Since I already had the condo key, I decided to gather some essentials to start setting up home. My first stop was the Silver Spur used car lot down the street, where I snagged a well-worn Focus sedan. Although it had seen its fair share of miles, it would suffice for local errands, even though I wouldn't trust it for long trips. Renting was an option, but I anticipated frequent returns, so I opted to buy. With a couple $100, I managed to acquire everything I needed for comfortable living, including a few changes of clothes. The remainder of the day was spent opening accounts at multiple casinos. I wrote checks payable to the respective casinos, and the funds vanished into my account without leaving a trace. By day's end, I had deposited $60,000 across 4 different casinos. I kept track of these transactions in a small pocket-sized notebook, recording the amounts, dates, and casino names. This served as a chronological record of my gambling losses over the weekend despite not having wagered a cent. Given my reputation as a poor poker player, any losses in roulette, craps, or blackjack would be plausible. With 6 months to gather the down payment for the condo, I anticipated no issues. Hunger caught up with me as I realized I had forgotten about lunch. By dinner time, I was famished. Opting for the casino restaurant where I had breakfast, I was greeted by Dora, my waitress once again. "You're still here? Seems like a long day," I remarked. "I have to work double shifts to make ends meet. Rent turned out to be higher than expected here. Care for a drink?" she replied. Preferring not to pry, I placed my order and maintained polite conversation. When she brought the check, she paused for a moment. "I apologize for my attitude this morning. I'm struggling to adjust to this place, and I'm feeling self-conscious about my eye. It's a parting gift from my husband when I mentioned divorce. Hopefully, it's the last." "Thank you for the generous tip at breakfast. It really helps," she explained, her smile tinged with sadness. Her words lingered in my mind throughout the night. That evening, I realized there wasn't much more I could do immediately. I needed to return home to attend to a few matters before proceeding further. Securing a flight back was no trouble, but I was uncertain about my plans upon arrival. The next morning, Dora was serving at the diner, and I managed to get one of her tables. When she brought the check after the meal, I approached her. "I have a small predicament, and I was wondering if you could assist me. I must leave today and won't be back for a week or so. I need someone to house sit for me. It's a 2-bedroom condo, so there won't be any living conflicts. Would you be able to help me out? It'll be for at least a couple of months." "Are you serious?" she asked. "No strings attached. I hate leaving the place unattended. Most of the time it'll be just you, and when I'm there, I'll stay out of your way. I promise," I reassured her, though in truth, I didn't mind if someone cleaned the place out. I couldn't let Dora know that. "Okay. Is it within walking distance of the diner?" she inquired. "It's pretty close, but I'm leaving you my car. Also, ensure it always has gas for when I return. I'll call you in advance. There's a machine on the phone," I explained. Dora seemed hesitant, perhaps fearing it was a setup, but I didn't have time to convince her otherwise. "Here's the condo key and the car key. The car's parked there. It's a dark blue Ford Focus. Here's the condo address. If you're not comfortable with it, don't worry. I'll retrieve the keys when I return next Friday," I said, jotting down the address on a napkin and handing it to her. She accepted the napkin and keys, still uncertain. Dora, don't stress about it. If you're not up for it, it's okay. If you decide against it, that's fine too, I reassured her. An hour later, I boarded my flight home. Although I would have preferred to stay in Reno, I drove by the house after retrieving my car from the long-term lot. Seeing Sandra's car gone, I quickly packed a few essentials for the week. Underwear, clothes, shoes, and my laptop, which took less than 10 minutes. I also retrieved my passport and birth certificate. The company had a few kitchenette-style units available for use, and my position allowed me to utilize one as needed. I booked it for the next 2 weeks and began charging my laptop battery before calling my eldest son, Jason. I explained to him that his mother and I were experiencing some domestic issues, and that I would be occupied for a while. I asked him to convey this to his sisters at Auburn University and reassure them not to worry. Despite all 3 of them being enrolled there, I still had to pay out-of-state tuition, though thankfully I could afford it. After hanging up, I plugged my cell phone into charge and took a shower. The only sustenance I had on the plane was a bag of peanuts, so I eagerly anticipated a satisfying dinner. Monday proved to be a hectic day. Prior to anything else, I visited the bank and secured a substantial second mortgage on the house, surpassing its current value. By the end of the month, this situation would change. Directly from the bank, I reached out to Auburn University and arranged prepaid tuition for my children, wiring $240,000 to the school. This left me with a cashier's check of just over $200,000 to take to Reno. I cashed in 2 CDs, paying the penalties, and closed out my money market account. I opted to leave the credit cards untouched until the month's end, realizing I was already running late for work. My loyal secretary greeted me with black coffee and a knowing smile. "Good morning, Mr. Terrell. Are you going to fill me in on what happened at the county club on Friday, or should I just believe the rumors?" she quipped. "Emily, the rumors are all accurate. Anything else you need to know?" I replied. Without hesitation, she responded, "What do you need me to do to assist?" "Get me all the information you can find on Todd Mitchell. I believe he used to work here, but I'm not certain. Arrange for my scheduled work to be handled by the staff and ensure any appointments or meetings I've set up remain unchanged. Any questions so far?" Emily left the office with a broad smile and a thumbs up, ready to tackle the tasks ahead. Initially, I had anticipated it would take several weeks to sort out my affairs, but now I realize it could all be wrapped up within a week. I promptly called my lawyer and scheduled an immediate appointment. Before leaving, I instructed Emily that I would neither be accepting nor returning any phone calls from my wife, and security was instructed not to permit her entry into the building. Jerry Proctor, a college friend of mine, was never fond of Sandra, making him the ideal candidate to handle my divorce. "I was at the country club on Friday, Robert, so I think I understand why you're here," Jerry remarked. "You're correct. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, Bob, but it's time you were right again. I thought I could endure it as long as I wasn't publicly embarrassed, but that changed on Friday. I need access to all your accounts and a couple of powers of attorney. I'll have my assistant prepare everything and give you a call." "Is there anything specific I should be aware of?" I responded. "Well, Jerry, unfortunately, the events of Friday triggered something in me. I've developed a gambling dependence. I spent the weekend in Reno and lost a significant amount of money. I'm going back next weekend, and I fear it will be even worse," I confessed. "Gee, that's terrible, buddy. I assume you're keeping records of all these losses," Jerry replied with a grin. "I have been, and I will continue to do so. It might be wise for me to send you copies of everything," I agreed. "Absolutely. You know, Bob, I don't think we should discuss this further. Agreed?" Jerry suggested. "You're right. Do you need anything else?" I inquired. "I'm good, Bob. Get out of here and handle your business," Jerry advised, handing me a financial worksheet to fill out before my next visit to sign the forms. It was then that I realized I had skipped lunch. Emily had a helpful sheet prepared for me, providing information about Todd Mitchell. She suggested I speak with Wilma Grimm in the personnel department before proceeding. Wilma, a longtime employee, always exuded confidence with her business suits and tightly pulled back bun, making her slightly intimidating to anyone who encountered her. If Emily thought it was necessary for me to meet with her, it must be important. "Good afternoon, Mr. Terrell. Please have a seat," she greeted me, attempting to put me at ease, though it wasn't quite successful. It felt akin to being in a room with a strict nun teacher. Despite my status as a grown man in a significant position, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by this woman. She closed her office door before speaking. Emily briefed me on the situation. "I don't indulge in office gossip, but I deal strictly in facts. 3 years ago, Todd Mitchell confided in me. I swore to keep his disclosures confidential. Unfortunately, it seems I can no longer honor that pledge. If anything I say offends you, feel free to leave, and our discussion will end. If you disagree with what you hear, direct your frustration elsewhere. I'm merely presenting the facts. Do you comprehend, Mr. Terrell? She stated firmly. Yes, I understand. I believe I can handle whatever you disclose without resorting to a temper tantrum, I replied, attempting a light-hearted remark, though it was met with a slight frown from her. Approximately 3.5 years ago, your wife, Sandra, approached Todd Mitchell at a company event. There was heavy drinking that night, and before it concluded, Todd and Sandra engaged in carnal activity in one of the private offices. Todd was set to marry the following month. Sandra threatened to reveal their affair to his fiancée unless he continued their liaisons. He hoped that once he married, she would cease her demands, but she persisted, coercing him into continued carnal encounters for several months under the threat of exposure. In a state of desperation, Todd sought my assistance. Naturally, he had to divulge the entire ordeal. Ethically, I couldn't disclose this information to you or anyone else. The best solution I could devise was to transfer Todd to another office. After relocating to Dallas, Sandra ceased her advances. Todd never disclosed the situation to his wife. Do you have any questions? It appears Mr. Mitchell was as much a sufferer in this debacle as anyone else. Initially, I contemplated some form of retribution, but that now seems imprudent. Any suggestions, Miss Grimm? Now that you're aware of your influence, I suggest letting the matter rest. Todd Mitchell is a valuable employee and an asset to the company. Don't jeopardize his career over something your wife initiated, she recommended. Thank you for your time. I agree with you. Being coerced into closeness with my wife is punishment in itself. As we rose, Wilma smiled, adding, By the way, it's not Miss. I've been married for 32 years. It was difficult to envision Wilma Grimm in a lovemaking setting with a man. However, perhaps when she lets her guard down, she transforms into a sort of lovemaking symbol. Suddenly, thoughts of a dominatrix crossed my mind, prompting me to shift focus. I had more pressing matters than Wilma's romantic life. Emily had rearranged my schedule, leaving me with a clean slate. Despite my wife's persistent calls, insisting I wasn't in Baltimore, I remained undeterred. As Emily had suggested, I had an appointment with the company president the next day, and one with the legal department that afternoon. I invited Emily to join me for supper, but she declined, citing her husband's disapproval. She jokingly proposed I ask Wilma instead. The meeting in the legal department took longer than expected, resulting in me retaining a few individuals. Over time, I extended apologies, which were met with understanding. Redeeming my retirement plan for a cash settlement proved challenging. Closing the shared savings account went smoothly, but required time for processing. Dealing with my sick time, vacation time, and company insurance, however, was relatively straightforward compared to other tasks. It had become quite evident by then that I would be departing from the company. I hoped the news wouldn't reach my wife prematurely. I ended up dining alone, strangely finding my thoughts drifting to Dora during the meal. I pondered whether she had moved into the condo and if she was still working double shifts. Despite my limited acquaintance with her, I felt a keen desire to return to Reno and see her. Recognizing the juvenile nature of these thoughts, I attempted to dismiss them. It was imprudent to waste time pondering fantasies that would never materialize. The following morning, I cashed in 2 whole life insurance policies and terminated 2 term policies. I was astounded by the substantial cash value the whole life policies had accrued. I arranged to collect the checks the following day. While my car was covered by company insurance, I canceled the insurance on Sandra's Lexus, as the lease was under her name while the insurance was under mine. Before heading into work, I dropped by Jerry's office, submitted the financial form, and signed several papers his secretary had prepared. Upon my return to the office, Emily had coffee ready. I don't mean to add insult to injury, boss, but you should speak with Calvin Bostic down in settlements before meeting with Richard, she advised. Richard Ryder, the company president, likely already knew the purpose of my visit. The settlements division was situated in the basement, an odd arrangement compared to the other department's locations, enjoying natural light and windows while they were relegated to what felt like a dungeon. Calvin? Emily mentioned you wanted to speak with me. I greeted Calvin Bostic, a reserved individual who always efficiently completed his tasks. He led me to a secluded area. I've heard rumblings about tensions in your office. I'm not one for gossip, but I felt you should be aware of something. About 6 years ago, we had a colleague named Raymond Upright. He was a decent guy, married with 2 children. He became entangled with your wife after an office event. She persistently contacted him at home and in the office. He regretted his actions and attempted to end the affair, but she wouldn't allow it, threatening to expose him to his wife if he tried to break it off. Foolishly, he called her bluff. 2 days later, Raymond's wife threw him out. He spiraled into drunkenness and lost his job. I'm uncertain of his current whereabouts. Nonetheless, Raymond's wife threatened to disclose your wife's affair to you. Allegedly, your wife paid her $10,000 to remain silent. I lack concrete evidence regarding this last detail. Thanks, Cal. I hope I didn't upset you, Mr. Terrell. But Emily suggested I inform you. You made the right call. I appreciate it, I acknowledged. I rode the elevator straight to the 9th floor, arriving a bit early for my appointment with Mr. Ryder. Nonetheless, he promptly ushered me in. The meeting was brief and to the point. The legal department, personnel department, and payroll would handle everything for me. Once the details were sorted out, I was instructed to personally contact Mr. Ryder from wherever I was. He handed me a card with his private cell number on the back. There were no assurances, no regrets, and no nonsense. While some matters were resolved, others remained open-ended. I simply nodded and departed without uttering a word. Emily greeted me with a wide smile upon my return to the office. As she handed me my usual cup of coffee, I returned the smile and instructed her to book me a flight to Reno for Thursday morning, with a 2-hour layover in Dallas. She gestured for me to look out the window. Sandra was in the parking lot, engaged in a heated argument with a security guard. She's been down there for over 20 minutes. They won't let her in, and she refuses to leave. What do you want to do, boss? It seems the guards have the situation handled. My only concern now is finding someone to have dinner with. I dislike dining alone, I remarked. I called Jerry to check on things. He informed me he couldn't take action until I resolved the financial mess. Currently, I was financially stable. With the incoming checks and cash in the bank, I was rather affluent. I assured Jerry I would head to Reno early and not return until I was penniless. Periodically, someone would pop their head into my office, informing me that my wife wanted me to call her. She had her friends call their husbands at work in an attempt to locate me. I lingered in the office for a few more hours, tidying up to ease the transition for my replacement. Sandra sat on the hood of my car, awaiting my exit. Emily flashed a smile as she handed over the keys to her Honda Civic. She mentioned it was a good excuse to have her husband pick her up and treat her to dinner. By the way, you're not planning anything reckless in Dallas, are you? Nope, just wrapping up loose ends. No revenge, I assure you. I drove to Allentown and grabbed dinner at the Outback. I was back in my apartment before midnight. The following morning flew by. I signed more paperwork for Jerry, closed all the bank accounts, and canceled all the credit cards. I even arranged to have the utilities shut off at the house. The next week, I collected checks from the bank, insurance company, and workplace. I was surprised to find out I was worth so much. I got a new cell phone and canceled the ones my wife and I had. I sold my country club membership to an old friend for $23,000. My replacement was already in position when I made my final stop at work. He appeared to be a nice guy, and he had arrived from Boston with just 24 hours' notice. He understood it was a smart move for him. Emily was more knowledgeable about office operations than I was, so training him wasn't necessary. There were a few items at the house I wished I had, but they weren't significant enough for me to return. Emily told me to keep her car, and her husband would pick it up at the airport. I bought a couple of cheap suitcases to pack my belongings from the apartment. Anything I forgot, I could purchase in Reno. Suddenly it dawned on me that I had completed everything I needed to do. All my assets were now in cash. There were no stocks, no accounts, and nothing else of value except the house, which I was gifting to my wife. AirBlue was accommodating. They had available seats and were happy to move up my flight. I called Jerry at home. Hey, buddy, just wanted to let you know I'm leaving tonight. I assume you have everything you need? I'm all set, Bob. I can serve the papers tomorrow. But I still need that financial info ASAP. You might as well give them to her. I'll start sending proof of financial irresponsibility soon. Be cautious, Bob. I don't want either of us in trouble. Sandra will probably get a fancy lawyer, maybe from Philly. He might bail if things go south. It's up to you, Jerry. Do your best for me, but keep the bill reasonable. I'll be strapped for cash soon. Don't forget that. One more thing. Look into a guy named Raymond Upright. He might need a hand. Depending on the situation, I might be the one to help. Got it, Bobby. Safe travels and keep in touch. I called the condo and left a message on the machine about my arrival later that night. I reassured her I'd call and not to be alarmed by someone at the door. At this point, I didn't know if she'd be there. I hoped so. It was strange. I hardly knew her, yet I hoped for some kind of relationship. For now, friendship would suffice. Her vulnerability made me cautious not to exploit it. I reached Dallas early enough for a leisurely breakfast. I was waiting in Todd Mitchell's office when he arrived, visibly displeased. "Mr. Terrell, I'd say it's nice to see you, but that'd be a lie. We both know it." "Relax, Todd. I hope you don't mind the informality. I'm not here to reprimand you. I wanted to let you know I understand your situation from before, and there are no hard feelings. You could have done that over the phone. I know, but I was passing through and felt it was worth my time to clear the air. I don't get it. Why bother? I messed up. I should be apologizing to you. You're not solely to blame. I was foolish too. I'm too ashamed to even tell my wife. You played a part, but most of the trouble was caused by my wife. What she did caused problems for you and now for me. I'm not excusing you entirely, but I don't want you carrying more guilt than necessary, because my dear wife was unfaithful. That's very kind of you to put it that way. I'm at a loss for words or actions in response. I reached over and passed him one of Jerry's cards. Later today, give my lawyer a ring. There's a chance he might need your help. It'll be kept confidential. He might say he doesn't need anything. At most, he might ask for a notarized statement confirming the affair. I assure you, it won't reach your wife. We shook hands as I stood up. An odd gesture given his betrayal, but it felt appropriate. Todd Mitchell was a decent man who didn't deserve his life to be ruined over a mistake, even if it was repeated. An hour later, I was on my flight back to Reno, pondering where I went wrong. I had worked tirelessly to provide for my family. I thought I did a commendable job. Yet while I ensured everyone's well-being, I neglected my wife. In situations like this, we often search for our own faults. Usually I find myself to blame, and I can accept that. But when it comes to Sandra's infidelity, it's a betrayal I cannot justify or excuse. Had she been discreet, perhaps I would have shouldered the blame and let it go. But her lack of discretion absolves me of guilt. The evening concluded on a positive note. Upon landing at Reno Tahoe International, I was pleasantly surprised to find Dora waiting at baggage claim. She wore jeans and a light blue Oxford shirt, a departure from her usual uniform. I hadn't intended for her to pick me up when I called. I simply wanted her to be aware of my arrival. "Good evening, Dora. I didn't expect to see you. I thought since I had your car, it was the least I could do." "Aren't you on duty?" "No, I managed to cut back thanks to your kind offer." "Oh, I wasn't being kind. I was just trying to find a way for us to be alone." "And what do you plan to do when you have me alone?" "I'm not sure yet. I haven't thought that far ahead. Any suggestions?" As I retrieved my luggage from the carousel, I noticed Dora blush slightly. It seemed like a cue to dial back before I scared her off. Her teasing question indicated she was comfortable enough to joke, which was a positive sign. 30 minutes later, we returned to a freshly decorated apartment. It was adorned with small touches that didn't break the bank but significantly enhanced the overall ambiance. In gratitude for her efforts in sprucing up the apartment and picking me up at the airport, I treated us to 2 prime rib dinners. It seemed Dora enjoyed the wine more than the beef. "How's the divorce proceeding?" "Pretty poorly. I still have 3 weeks left before I can even file." "You need 6 weeks to establish residency." Despite what everyone said, I thought this would be straightforward. I probably would have been better off handling it from home. "Why didn't you?" Dora paused, fiddling with her food before looking up. Getting away from Tony was more crucial than getting the divorce. The divorce is just a piece of paper that won't shield me from further misuse. I think I used the divorce as an excuse to justify coming out here. The location wasn't important. What mattered was that I left. Dora's explanation resonated with me. Initially, divorcing Sandra seemed significant, but now I wasn't so sure. All I truly wanted was to prevent her from benefiting from the marriage, unless I had intentions of remarriage, which I didn't. It didn't matter. The remainder of the evening was spent discussing more mundane topics like hobbies, movies, and books. Dora didn't have children, and I didn't inquire further. We slept in separate bedrooms that night. Dora had already left for work by the time I woke up. Fresh coffee awaited me, and that was all I needed. I still felt full from last night's indulgence. After a quick shower, I got down to business. "Jerry, how's my favorite attorney holding up?" There was a sigh from the other end of the line. "Not worth a dime." "Robert, I've got some bad news for you. Can you promise not to shoot the messenger?" "Oh, geez. I've only been away for 1 day. What happened?" "Sandra's caused quite a stir. She found out about the bank accounts and other things. After contacting the police, she managed to secure a restraining order against just about everything. All your accounts are frozen, even though they're empty. You're forbidden from coming near her or the house, taking anything from the house, or contacting your children, even though they're legally adults. Most of it seems like nonsense, but sorting it all out will take a lot of time and money if you want to fix it. She even contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission about your 401k and retirement accounts. Somehow she's got the IRS looking into things too. Jerry, I don't know how to say this, but I want no part of any of it. I'm done. Do you understand? I hear you loud and clear, buddy. Just so you know, she's also hired a private investigator to track you down. I wonder how she plans to pay for all this. Don't know, and I don't care. Remember, if the cops or feds ask me where you are, I'll have to tell them. I won't risk my career for you, even though we're friends. I get it, Jerry. Protect yourself. I'll make some adjustments on my end. I won't be calling you again for a while. Thanks for your understanding, buddy. Well, that throws a wrench in the works. Even the best laid plans can go awry in a flash. I had to switch to plan B, and I didn't even have one. My brilliant idea to pretend to lose all my money in the casinos was shot down. I decided not to reach out to anyone else. Fortunately, Dora left me the car, which was a relief. I don't know how she got to work. I was left with a small duffel bag full of money and checks. I had to visit 6 different casinos to cash all my checks and exchange them for chips or credit. I was hesitant to go to the banks in case there was a hold or trace on anything. The casinos were more than willing to assist. By the end of the morning, I had everything deposited at several places and a bag filled with cash and chips. After a quick lunch, I initiated the withdrawals. Within 2 hours, all the chips had been exchanged for cash, and all the cash had been withdrawn from the casino accounts. I now possessed a substantial amount of money, and there were no problems or suspicious occurrences thus far. It took me under an hour to drive to Carson City. There, I rented a large safety deposit box at a small, inconspicuous bank and stored everything except $5,000, which I kept for incidental expenses. With everything now secure, I looked forward to another leisurely dinner with Dora to celebrate. I had a hunch something was amiss. Upon entering the condo, Dora was scrambling to rectify things that shouldn't have been disturbed in the first place. She immediately looked up at me, partly covering her face. "I'm sorry, Robert. It's my fault. I don't know how he found me, and I didn't realize he was following me until I arrived at the apartment. I should have been more cautious. I'm truly sorry." Gently, I lowered her hand from her face. Dora sported a new black eye and a swollen lip, along with a large bluish bruise on her right cheek. "Was it Tony?" She nodded, confirming. "He had his 2 brothers with him. They're out searching for you now. Tony instructed me not to leave the condo." "Where are they searching?" "I gave them the names of 3 casinos. They're clueless about your appearance. They're not thinking clearly." It was obvious. We couldn't stay, and involving the police wasn't an option. We left everything behind, headed west, and spent the night at a small off-road motel in Grass Valley. Despite there being only 1 bed, I acted chivalrously. I brought takeout to the room and bought some makeup for Dora. She did her best to conceal the bruises, but it was still noticeable. She apologized profusely throughout the night. I felt relieved when she finally fell asleep. The next day, we drove to Sacramento to buy clothing and personal items. I had no idea when we could return to the condo. I had booked the Grass Valley Motel for 2 additional nights. Over the next few days, Dora and I got acquainted. There was no closeness or suggestive remarks. After just 3 days, I felt more at ease with her than I did with my wife of 24 years. While I wasn't conversing with Dora, I fretted over the unfolding events. I was hesitant to bring Dora back to the condo, fearing Tony might find her. Similarly, I was apprehensive about returning myself, concerned that someone might be searching for me. Yet carelessly, I left behind my laptop, passport, and other personal documents at the condo. Foolishly, I deemed them significant and felt compelled to retrieve them. Truly foolish. Despite only knowing Dora for a short time, I felt compelled to trust her. We were both in the same predicament regarding our spouses. "Have you ever been to Mexico?" "No, I haven't." "Are we considering going to Mexico, Robert?" "I'm uncertain, but in case things take a turn for the worse, I need you to do something for me. I don't want you getting into trouble, and I want to keep you safe from Tony." "Robert, you don't owe me anything. You've already done more than enough. I'll manage." "Well, I'm not certain about my own situation. I've stashed away a significant amount of money. It's clean money, but I'm hiding it from my wife. If anything happens to me, I need you to retrieve the cash for me." Who's after you? You haven't mentioned anything about that. Did you do something illegal? There are multiple federal agencies and a private detective looking for me. If necessary, the local police will likely get involved. All I'm trying to do is safeguard some money for my wife. What should I do with this money? I've been pondering that. Head to Guadalajara and wait for me there. Use whatever funds you need until I arrive. How will you locate me? Visit the Libertad market for coffee every morning. I'll find you. It's sizable, but I'll find you. When should I do this? When you realize I'm in trouble. Why not do it now? Be patient. I'll bring you along. I'd prefer us to go together rather than separately. It feels safer that way. Why can't we both leave now? The conversation began to loop, so I disregarded her. I didn't intend to be rude, just eager to proceed. 2 hours later, we crossed the pass and arrived in Carson City. Dora's name was added to the access for the safety deposit box, and she received her own key. Upon returning to the condo, I parked half a block away. The complex had a lower-level parking area beneath the units, open but covered. I instructed Dora to wait in the car until I confirmed there wouldn't be any issues. What kind of problem? I had no clue. Given recent events, anything was possible, and it unfolded as I wandered through the parking lot. Robert Terrell, turn around. He was a slight man, somewhat wiry. The lengthy leather coat he sported seemed more odd than menacing. He lacked the demeanor to pull it off. However, the sizable black weapon in his grip compensated. Do we know each other? A broad grin stretched across his face as if he took pride in revealing his identity. I'm Laszlo. Your wife sent me. All right. What do you need from me? I require your wedding ring and your wallet. The wedding ring I understand, but why the wallet? I need to make it seem like a robbery. Make what appear as a robbery? Your wife hired me to eliminate you, Mr. Terrell. I hope she paid you up front because she's broke. What do you mean? That marked the end of our dialogue. From afar, 3 burly Italians clad in lengthy leather coats emerged. Bobby Terrell, we need to have a word with you. Tony was particularly vocal. Their abrupt arrival caught Laszlo off guard. As they noticed the firearm in his hand, all 3 reached for their own concealed weapons as I hurled myself over the concrete barrier toward the exterior of the parking lot. Laszlo temporarily lost interest in me. As I dashed along the building's side toward the car, gunfire reverberated off the garage walls. Glancing up, I spotted Dora racing down the street and 2 suited men exiting a black SUV across the way. It was evident they were federal agents, presumably awaiting my arrival. The shootout provided a distraction, allowing me to flee the area. Dora and the car were nowhere to be seen. There was no chance I was returning to that condo. I didn't care who shot whom in the parking garage. I just wanted out. What I knew for certain was that 3 different factions were after me for various reasons. It was clear to me that I needed to lay low for a while. While I had over $4 grand on hand, catching a bus to Carson City to retrieve my money wasn't a viable option. I was too much of a target at the moment. Yeah, hot is the right word for it. I was just trying to escape from a wife who betrayed me. What had gone wrong? Why was my wife attempting to have me eliminated? Perhaps she hadn't realized there was no longer any insurance payout. I had overestimated her intelligence. That was my blunder. So I took a bus to San Francisco. $1 grand doesn't stretch far in the city by the bay. The first 1,000 secured me a social security number and an ID, allowing me to seek employment. I found a modest room with shared facilities and landed a job as a waiter in a discreet eatery. After about a month, I was earning enough to sustain myself and was becoming quite adept at waiting tables. Some patrons even requested my section. I hadn't kept up with my cell phone payments and the service had been cut off. Since leaving Reno, I hadn't used it anyway. It only cost me a few bucks to set up a new prepaid service with 50 minutes of airtime. I wanted to reach out to Dora, but I had no clue where she was, so I decided to call Jerry. Hey, Jerry, it's Robert. Just wanted to touch base. Bobby, good to hear from you. Things are still chaotic, but not quite as you might expect. Where the heck are you? None of your business where I am. Last time we spoke, I was besieged by unsavory characters all wanting something. Am I still a marked man? Well, most of that mess cleared up, especially after Sandra got arrested. From what I gather, the IRS is still pursuing payment on 401k assets. Apart from that, things are looking up. What do you mean Sandra was arrested? I thought you, of all people, would know about it. Ever heard of a guy named Lester Laszlo? Yeah, I briefly met him about 3 months back. He was attempting to off me when we were interrupted by some other fellows who had a bone to pick with me. While they were arguing over who would get a shot at me, I slipped out the back door. How does he tie in? Sandra hired Laszlo to take you out. Laszlo got seriously injured in Reno and spilled everything to the cops. He claimed Sandra was stiffing him on a $10,000 contract, so he squealed. Believe it or not, the cops bought it and slapped her with charges. She's stuck in jail awaiting trial because she can't make bail. Jerry, I'd consider helping her out if she hadn't tried to have me bumped off. Her parents should bail her out, not me. Let me see what I can do. Bobby, no one seems too interested in you right now. Want me to restart the divorce proceedings? I think we have solid grounds this time. Might as well. Divorce would tidy things up, though I couldn't care less at this point. I've kept all the paperwork. I reckon I can still use most of it. Oh, forgot to mention, your kids all returned home when Sandra got in trouble. They were worried initially, but lost interest once the truth came out. They want you to reach out and reassure them you're okay. I'll contact them as soon as I can. How'd your money laundering plan pan out? Not worth a lick. Lost control and lost touch. I'll try to check on it next week. Jerry, sometimes even the best laid plans fall flat. Okay, stay in touch, buddy. One more thing, Jerry. Did Sandra ever say why she wanted me dead? Not that I know of. I figured it was for the insurance, unaware that you'd canceled. I touched base with the kids, and everything's fine. They felt better knowing their tuition was prepaid. They were curious about what went down between Sandra and me, but I couldn't bring myself to spill the beans. Some things will have to wait. I borrowed a car and drove up to Carson City. The safety deposit box turned out to be empty. She could have left a note at least. I couldn't really gripe since I gave her the key and access. Did she head to Guadalajara, or did she find a hideout beyond my reach? There was only one way to find out. In my San Francisco neighborhood, there were several small travel agencies, most specializing in group tours for like-minded people, which I didn't quite fit into. Finally, I found a tour to my favorite Mexican city with a last-minute cancellation I could snag. It was the first time I had to scrape together enough money for something. The trip wasn't overly pricey. I just didn't have much cash. I felt at ease since a few guys from the restaurant were on the trip. Most signed up for side trips, but I had other plans. The first 2 days were a letdown. The Libertad market was larger than I anticipated. In hindsight, it wasn't the best choice. I hated to entertain the idea that maybe Dora had taken my money and jetted off somewhere more exotic. Perhaps Bangkok or Tahiti. There was enough money in that safety deposit box to live almost anywhere. I was torn between waiting for her to pass by or searching for her. Ended up doing both. By the third day, it was getting dull. About time, Robert. Where have you been? I turned and saw Dora, hands on hips, wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat with a red band. I didn't say anything. I walked over and kissed her for the first time. Don't know why I hadn't done it earlier. Glad I did now. That's a pretty lame excuse. Try it again. The second kiss came with a big hug as I lifted her off the ground. Dora, I missed you so much. You'll have to tell me where you've been for the last month later. Let's go home and have some lunch. We strolled through the market hand in hand. Felt happy and content for the first time in a while. Robert, don't be mad, but I used some of your money. Most of it's in the bank. But I needed a place to live. So I bought us a house. I hoped you wouldn't mind with all that money in the bank. It's a beautiful hacienda in a beautiful city, and I'm with a wonderful woman. Love it when a plan comes together. Sandra's parents managed to gather her bail money and cover her legal fees. Jerry easily obtained her signature on the divorce documents. She received a 5 to 8 year sentence for attempting to have me eliminated. The reason behind Todd Mitchell providing a deposition to Jerry remained a mystery, but Jerry never needed to use it. Jerry successfully located Ray Upright, who was sober but struggling. When asked how he could assist, Ray expressed a desire for a hot dog pushcart, which I was able to provide for $2,400. I resolved my issues with the IRs for $4,000. Laszlo is currently incarcerated in Nevada, along with Dora's husband and brothers. The duration of their stay is uncertain. With no legal troubles looming over me, I was free to return home to my old job, now with a promotion awaiting me. Once Dora's Mexican divorce is finalized, we intend to marry. The kids are scheduled to attend the wedding during spring break. While the house in Guadalajara is stunning, we're inclined not to make it our permanent residence. Dora prefers to keep it as a vacation home. Emily eagerly anticipates my return to work, particularly in the new role, which signifies a promotion for both of us. Dora is flexible about our future location as long as we're together. She's keen for me to introduce her to Sandra, which promises to be an interesting encounter. Though my plans didn't unfold as expected, I have no grounds to complain.
David, 36, male, was a dentist working every day. He was the father of 2 young children and trusted his partner, Lily, 30, female, more than anyone. She was meant to be his rock and life partner. Lily's dream was to explore the world. She was very intelligent and had acted like a respectable woman for years, so David wanted to make her dream come true. Even before their wedding, he couldn't imagine living his life without her. They were married for 6 years before their first child was born. 4 years later, their second child arrived. Shortly after their second child's 5th birthday, Lily celebrated 10 years of employment at her company. Their life seemed perfect. They celebrated by hosting a party at their home. Several of Lily's colleagues came over, and it was only the second time David had met them in all those years. Everyone appeared really nice. Many people complimented David and Lily, and the kids got out of bed to meet their parents' friends. David noticed nothing unusual about the party or the people there. Lily seemed a bit excited and jittery, but that was her usual behavior at social gatherings. Unbeknownst to her, David was saving up for a trip to New Zealand to celebrate their upcoming 25th wedding anniversary. He worked 6 days a week and looked forward to the trip more than any day off. He often thought their area needed more dentists. Just days after the party, and right before he planned to reveal the trip to Lily and the kids, his mother-in-law, Susan, texted him. Her message was brief. "She's cheating on you." David replied with a string of question marks. When Susan didn't respond, he called her. Susan sighed and admitted that many people knew about Lily's affair with a colleague. David was stunned. He asked why Susan or anyone else had never told him. Susan said she didn't want to reveal her daughter's secret, but decided he deserved to know after so long. She mentioned that Lily was eagerly looking forward to an upcoming business trip, and that Lily had confided in her that she felt guilt-free during work trips with her affair partner. Susan admitted that Lily might be enjoying the affair more than her marriage. David asked Susan about custody of the children. She started saying that Lily was still an excellent mother and suggested David could let Lily have them. David hung up, realizing Susan and Lily cared only about themselves. Determined to take back control, David explained the situation to his lawyer, feeling foolish for not seeing the signs. The lawyer advised him to gather evidence before confronting Lily. So before Lily left on her eagerly awaited business trip, David asked where it would be held and wrote down the address. Lily probably thought he was asking for safety reasons. She kissed the kids goodbye and tried to kiss David, but he pulled away. She didn't ask why and left, which made David realize she no longer cared about him. David planned to surprise Lily at the address she provided. He left the kids with his mother, Carol, who was very excited to see them. Carol lived independently, 45 minutes away, and was not comfortable driving often, so the kids didn't visit her frequently. David needed her help now more than ever. Arriving at the address of a luxurious hotel, David found the room for Lily's company event. He recognized several people as he walked around, recording on his phone as he searched for Lily. If she was openly spending time with her affair partner, David knew this was the best way to gather proof. People he had met before stared at him. One woman gasped and fixed her gaze on him. David knew he had caught Lily. With an audience of about 80 people, David finally made eye contact with Lily, who had another man's arm around her waist. Just before noticing David, Lily appeared to be having a wonderful time. David was in shock. Lily dropped her wine glass as he felt an anger he had never felt before. He thought about flipping over a table, but focused on recording the scene. Trembling, he rhetorically asked if anyone cared to reveal the truth about Lily. No one spoke or moved. David asked Lily directly why she had cheated on him. Even though it didn't matter why she cheated, he needed an explanation. On camera, she stammered and said she didn't know why. David scoffed loudly and declared that their children deserved a better mother before walking out. Later that night, after returning home with the kids, Susan called, pleading for David to give Lily another chance. Susan said it wasn't her place to reveal Lily's actions, but now wanted David to forgive her daughter so she could return home. Susan admitted she didn't have room for Lily and didn't want her living with her. David laughed heartily and hung up. Susan and Lily had only thought of themselves. Susan was annoyed that everyone knew about Lily's affair except David. So she revealed the truth. Now that it was inconvenient for her, she wanted David to forgive Lily, not out of concern for her daughter, but because she wanted her house back. 2 days later, Lily called David, asking for forgiveness because she didn't want to live with her mother. She said she was sorry, but David knew her tears were about the consequences of her actions, not genuine remorse. David had already uploaded the video online and sent it to Lily's company. Lily and her affair partner lost their jobs. David used the saved money for a trip to New Zealand, which was now a celebration of being a father to his amazing kids. Carol took Lily's ticket. Lily didn't believe it at first, but threw a tantrum. David felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness as he realized that Lily missed out on her dream because of her affair. The trip to New Zealand was incredible and helped him grow as a father and heal as a man. Susan's guilt led her to expose her daughter's affair, motivated by her own inconvenience. David did the right thing by confronting Lily, recording the evidence, and refusing to forgive her. He demonstrated that victims should not be pressured into forgiveness and should never accept less than the vows their spouse made. Honest communication is the only way to resolve such issues properly. Here's the shuffled and renamed version of the second part of the script. In many cases, when one spouse starts comparing or festers a thought into a justification for cheating, it doesn't mean there's a specific problem with the relationship. It's crucial to shut down that temptation as soon as it arises by having honest conversations with your partner every day. Appreciate everything your spouse shares with you and work together to decide on the next steps. I wish you all the best. Now, let's dive into our next story for today. Alex, 28 male, and his wife Emily, 27 female, married young when they were 20 and 21. Alex met Emily through friends while attending university and quickly fell in love. Despite his past reservations about letting his guard down, he believed they were meant to be together. Alex earned his degree the same year Emily became pregnant. Their life was moving fast, but Alex felt secure and untroubled. His parents were slightly anxious, while Emily's parents were thrilled she was settling down and staying out of trouble. Emily didn't share much about her past, but she had a lot of friends. It often felt like Alex was sharing her with her friends throughout their relationship. After their son was born, Emily resumed her social life and insisted that Alex stay home with their baby. While she went out at least once a week, Alex agreed to this arrangement easily, feeling like they were living the perfect life. However, he soon wanted to spend time out together, but Emily didn't trust their parents to watch their son. This frustration grew because Alex believed their parents should help and adore their grandson. So, the routine continued. Emily went out with friends, and sometimes Alex watched the baby while she went out. This separation was unsettling. Before Alex could address it, Emily began acting oddly. She would tell Alex which friends she was meeting each night, but she started mixing up names and forgetting details. When Alex pointed out these inconsistencies, Emily claimed she had to lie to her mom about who she hung out with because her mom disliked one of her friends. Alex didn't believe this excuse. It seemed alarming that Emily couldn't keep her story straight. If her mom disliked a friend, it wasn't a complicated lie to manage, and it shouldn't affect her honesty with Alex. Wanting to avoid an argument, Alex noticed Emily was on the defensive. One night, while Emily was out, Alex called his mother-in-law, Lisa. He asked her who Emily said she had been with the night before. Lisa was clearly uncomfortable and evasive, swearing and sighing heavily. Lisa eventually admitted that Emily was seeing someone else, attributing it to her immaturity. Alex was shocked and hurt. Lisa justified Emily's behavior, suggesting that if Alex could overlook it this time, Emily would learn and grow from the experience. Disheartened, Alex hung up. Seeing his son, Alex felt shattered and knew he would never be the same. When Emily returned, Alex confronted her with what he knew. Emily broke down, looking at their son, and pleaded for forgiveness, echoing Lisa's claims of youthful mistakes. Alex found it frustrating to hear her speak of what she didn't deserve. To him, she didn't deserve his trust or their happy home. He had dedicated himself to her, despite being only a year older. This betrayal was the one thing Alex had sworn he would not tolerate in his marriage. Fueled by these thoughts, he told Emily to stay with her mom, taking their son with her. During the divorce, Alex knew he needed solid evidence of Emily's affair. Unable to get information from Emily or Lisa, he served subpoenas to Emily's cell phone provider. Emily, up. Learning this, requested a protective order to block his efforts to prove her infidelity. Thankfully, the court sided with Alex, granting him the right to pursue discovery, which revealed clear evidence of the affair, including images and texts between Emily and several other men. The evidence showed her plans to meet her affair partner and 2 other men. Alex won primary custody and began to heal from the ordeal. He started dating a wonderful woman, Sarah, a young widow with a young daughter. About a year and 2 months ago, Alex felt his story was preordained, as if he was always meant to be with Sarah and be a father figure to her child. He believed he had grown wiser and seen through Emily and Lisa's manipulative tactics. To others in similar situations, Alex's experience demonstrates that one should not accept betrayal as a mere mistake due to immaturity. Infidelity reveals a lack of respect and readiness for marriage. Alex set an example by separating from the cheater, seeking support and evidence, and not settling for less. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed them, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, share your thoughts on what happened in the comments below.
Hello everyone. My name is Garci, I'm 26 years old, and I've been dating my boyfriend, whom I met through an online game exactly 1 year ago. Initially, I was nervous about meeting someone online, but we instantly clicked due to our similar family backgrounds. Now, he's the one who understands me the most and is incredibly important to me. We were invited to an outdoor party hosted by his friend, and we decided to attend together. It was a barbecue at a cabin owned by his friend's father. Everything tasted delicious, and I met his friends for the first time. Their wives and girlfriends were all wonderful people. Initially, I was nervous, but by the time we left, I was completely at ease. On the way back, he suddenly stopped the car and started to talk. What did you think about my friends? They're all very nice people. I'm glad I could get along with them and had fun. Thank you for taking me there. Really, I'm glad you know. I hope we can keep having fun like this, preferably as husband and wife. What do you think? I was surprised. Was that a proposal? Of course, my answer was yes. It felt like a dream. We were so excited. In the heat of the moment, we decided, let's have our wedding there, and headed to a memorable hotel. This was the first place he brought me on our first drive date when we had just started dating. It's a quiet hotel in the mountains, and from the restaurant, you can see the lake in front of the hotel. Not only was the view stunning, but there was also a couple having their wedding at that time, and he remembered me saying how lovely it was. We both agreed that we would like to have our wedding there. But as soon as we arrived, our hopes were dashed. It is indeed a secluded hotel, but it's famous for its high status. At the moment, we were returning from an outdoor event, dressed casually in t-shirts, jeans, sneakers, and carrying backpacks. It was clear that we did not fit into the upscale atmosphere of this hotel. However, the bellhop who should have greeted us glanced at us and then blatantly ignored us. We even caught him exchanging looks and laughing with other staff members. We began to feel self-conscious about our attire, but my boyfriend confidently continued walking deeper into the lobby. During this time, the front desk staff were whispering and pointing toward us. It was an uncomfortable feeling. The last time we were here, we were dressed more formally, and the atmosphere was completely different. Feeling out of place, I tugged at his hand, but he pulled mine back as if to tell me not to worry, and we arrived at the concierge desk. Upon seeing us, the concierge seemed startled, but after taking a good look at us, he asked with a cold smile, "May I help you?" I wanted to retort that of course we needed help, that's why we were standing there, but I let my boyfriend handle the situation. "We are actually considering holding our wedding ceremony here. Could you tell us? Where is the wedding reception desk?" On hearing this, the concierge made a clearly disgusted face. "This isn't your ordinary city hotel. It's a place frequented by celebrities and the wealthy. I don't think it's the kind of place where people like you would hold a wedding." "I'm aware. We've been here before. We love the view and thought it would be great to hold our ceremony here. As I said, this isn't a place where people like you would have a wedding." "What do you mean by that? Can you just connect us to the wedding reception desk?" I could sense his frustration growing as his voice raised. I gently squeezed his hand to calm him down as the concierge continued speaking. "What I'm saying is, this hotel is not a place for poor people like you. Please leave immediately." What did he just call us? Poor. This concierge just called us poor. Despite his polite phrasing, he just called us poor. I was ready to tell him off for his snooty attitude, but I decided to let my boyfriend handle this. "Did you just call your customer poor? What's wrong with the staff training at this hotel?" My boyfriend's voice was firm. "Sir, I must ask you to leave this lobby immediately as it is getting dirty. It's causing an inconvenience to the other guests. Cut it out already. We're just asking for a wedding consultation. Can't you at least let us look around without any hassle?" I interjected, feeling my frustration rising. "A tour? A wedding? You've got to be kidding. Even if you worked your whole life and saved every penny, you couldn't afford a wedding here. A tour would be a complete waste of time, wouldn't it?" The concierge's disdainful tone grated on my nerves. "Hey, that's enough. Let's go home. The other customers are watching too," my boyfriend said, trying to diffuse the escalating tension. "Garci, just stay out of it. This hotel won't do if they can't get it together. They need to act properly," he continued, his frustration evident. He hates injustice so much that he's ruthless when dealing with people who act unfairly. Generally, this only stirs up animosity and heats things up. I thought to myself, watching the exchange. How did you learn customer service? You're supposed to be a specialist as a concierge, right? Is it acceptable to treat us the way you just did? My boyfriend's voice cut through the tension, demanding an answer. At that moment, a voice came from behind. "What's going on here?" Apparently, the manager had come over, thinking we were causing a disturbance. "We're simply asking to be shown around because we're interested in having a wedding here," my boyfriend replied stoically. Just like the other staff, the manager gave us a top-to-bottom once-over, chuckled dismissively, and said, "I'm afraid a wedding at our hotel might be out of your reach." The concierge joined in after hearing his words. "That's exactly what I told them, but they won't leave, and it's causing a problem. It's a disturbance to our other guests for you to be in the lobby for such a long period. I'm sorry. But I think it's best if you give up on the wedding and please leave," the manager stated firmly. "Hold on a second. We were just asking to look around because we're interested in having a wedding here. Isn't it okay if you just show us around?" I asked, trying to reason with them. "Sir, I am the manager of this hotel. If you continue to loiter here..." He gestured to call security. "So what do we need to do to be able to look around?" "Well, if you were to buy the hotel and become the owner, The situation seemed even more absurd at his words. I was on the brink of losing it, thinking, what the heck is he talking about? But he just said, I see, so that's how it is. The owner, and started to ponder. Just then, security started to approach us, so I grabbed his hand and urged him to leave. As we walked away with our backs to the manager, he started giving instructions to the concierge, contact the cleaning staff. The lobby has been completely dirted. Have it cleaned immediately. What the heck was dirty? In my mind, I cursed at them, thinking their attitudes were far dirtier than anything else. We left the hotel behind us, quite upset. I thought of taking a walk in the garden and admiring the lake before heading home, but we were quickly spotted by the manager from before as we strolled through the garden. Ah yes, this is troublesome. If you walk around here, it could ruin the view for other guests who are enjoying the scenery. What's the big deal about looking at the view? That's not okay. This view is for the guests who use our hotel. If you can't afford it, please hurry and leave. He tried to shoo us away. Are you possibly thinking about a wedding? Dreaming of a garden wedding? It's useless. Do you have any idea how much it costs to rent out this entire garden? Please make your way out. Then he sprayed me with a hose. Stop loitering and get going. Oh no, I'm all wet now. What is this old guy thinking? This hotel might not be as safe as we thought, even if he's not the one in charge. Hey, what do you think you're doing? There was a stray cat in the garden. I was just sprinkling water to clean it up. When suddenly the stray cat reappeared, he threatened to spray water again. My boyfriend, at his wit's end with these words and actions, shouted, "Are you referring to Garci as a stray cat? Enough is enough. Is this how a person in hospitality behaves, spraying water on people? Hey, call the cops." I had a feeling it was going to turn into a big deal. I couldn't stay there and get soaked any further. Enraged, I told him, I want to change my clothes. Let's go, and dragged him back to the car. We came here excited about planning our wedding, but this turned out to be quite an ordeal. This hotel feels so different from when we visited on our date. It's almost like a different hotel altogether. Now, with wet clothes. The wet clothes I was wearing were clear proof of the reality of the situation. I'm so glad I had a change of clothes in the car. After changing and feeling a bit refreshed, he asked me, "Garci, what do you want to do? Do you still want to have our wedding at this hotel?" Honestly, I didn't really care at that point. It's still a place of fond memories, I said. I don't know. The hotel itself is lovely, but I'm not sure about the staff. He simply replied, I see. Let's think about it a bit, and that was the end of the conversation. Afterward, we decided to at least pay our respects to both families. It's been a whirlwind since then. Our parents asked about our plans for the wedding and reception. For now, we told them we've planned a small, intimate ceremony with only friends and family and asked them to hold off on the location. We've been visiting bridal fairs at other hotels, looking for a good place, but we haven't found one that feels just right. I found myself in a bit of a bind, considering options for our wedding. Perhaps a destination wedding abroad would be an option. Just as I was flipping through a bridal magazine with these thoughts, my boyfriend called, "Garci, we did it. We can get married at that hotel." What? What do you mean? It was a bit of a struggle, but since it's my hotel now, you can plan the wedding any way you like. I couldn't believe it. He had been working on this all along. It turns out he's the son of a wealthy family and managed to get that hotel acquired by their chain of hotels. The old man said if I wanted to get married, I should become the hotel owner, he said, sounding quite pleased. I was too stunned to say anything in response to his surprising actions, but we decided to visit the hotel the following week. Finally, the day arrived. On the way there, my boyfriend said cheerfully, that hotel's reputation hasn't been great lately, and it's been affecting the business side of things. So I'll work on making it a better hotel, okay? He seemed to be having a lot of fun. The last time we visited, it was nerve-wracking because of how we were treated, but this time the hotel staff were prim and proper, ready to welcome their new owner. Looking around, I felt a sense of relief and excitement. I noticed that the bellboy who once scoffed at us was now bowing deeply in welcome. If they could welcome us properly now, they should have done so from the beginning. Knowing about their previous terrible service, their current behavior seemed quite insincere. I felt like laughing at them now, but I must keep my composure. Then came the hotel manager. "Welcome, Mr. Owner." Not just the manager, but also the concierge and the rest of the staff greeted us respectfully. They didn't seem to realize that we were the poor people they had treated terribly before. It's shocking to see such a difference in treatment based on appearance. The way they changed their attitude so quickly is honestly appalling, but it's a good lesson for me. And so, we were shown to the owner's suite, and the manager was fawning over us. We've been eagerly awaiting the arrival of the new owner, and to think it's someone as young as you. It's truly impressive that you are the owner of this hotel at your age. Your wife is also quite beautiful, a truly stunning couple. Ha! Who is this guy? You called us stray cats, but now you're saying we're handsome and beautiful. Aren't those glasses missing lenses? And the manager doesn't remember customers' faces at all. That's wild. We decided to wait for a while since he said he'd create a space for us to greet the employees later. When the manager left us to prepare, I said, "What's up with that manager? He doesn't know anything about us. Is he handsome and beautiful? Seriously? It seems like he didn't notice at all. It's kind of impressive in that way. Well, he looks enthusiastic, so I guess it's fine if he does what he wants. Is it okay for that guy to be the manager?" "I know. Don't worry. I thought about it." While having this conversation, it was time. He went to the hall where the employees were gathered. "I have become the owner of this hotel. I know you may be uneasy since I'm young, but the headquarters will manage the business firmly, so please rest assured. We plan to operate this hotel as a secluded hideaway, different from the luxury hotels in the city up until now. After repairing the aging parts, we will have a renewal opening. In conjunction with the reopening, I'm thinking of having my own wedding ceremony here to commemorate the start of the hotel and me." The unexpected happy announcement stirred up the employees. Then he called me to introduce his fiancée, and I went up to the stage. When I got up there, the manager standing proudly next to him looked utterly surprised. That's my fiancée." "Oh, it wasn't our first meeting, was it? You didn't recognize me either, did you?" At his direction, I was dressed in a t-shirt, denim, and sneakers, like the last time we visited the hotel. If I had worn a dress and heels, he wouldn't have noticed, but just by changing my clothes, he seemed to remember me right away. Seriously, this manager seems to judge people solely by their clothes. Looking around, the bell staff and front desk staff who laughed at us that day were staring at us with wide eyes. The concierge, oh, he's looking pale and his eyes are darting around. It seems that he finally remembered us. This time, my boyfriend, who confirmed the situation, continued talking to the employees who were clueless about what happened that day. "Actually, we visited this hotel the other day, and at that time, we were both dressed like her now. I got her approval for my proposal, so I was over the moon when we came here thinking we wanted to have our wedding here." The bellboy, that's you, right? You ignored us without even saying welcome and laughed at us. The front desk staff were pointing and whispering about us. The concierge, you didn't listen or pay attention. When we said we wanted to have our wedding here, you told us that poor people should go home. The worst was you, the manager. Actually, I recorded our conversation from the middle of it and decided to let everyone hear it. The recording of the exchange with the manager played, and the employees started murmuring with disbelief on their faces. They called them poor people. Isn't that terrible treatment? They began to say. The manager turned pale and trembled. After the audio ended, he began to speak. As you can see, we were treated as poor because of our modest attire, and in the end, we were doused with water and driven out. This is unacceptable, isn't it? There were nods of agreement from the crowd. Regardless of what we were wearing, I come from a family that owns a chain of hotels, and she is the daughter of a big pharmaceutical company CEO. We are not poor. This time, we were advised by your manager here to become the owners if we wanted to have our wedding here. But what if we were other guests? This should never happen, right? I chimed in. This hotel, which is not particularly conveniently located, should offer the best service to all guests who take the trouble to come here. I want to return this hotel to the state it once was. Let's make this the best hotel together. Applause filled the room. Afterward, he demoted everyone from the manager and concierge to staff who had reports of poor work attitudes. The manager and concierge were asked to start from scratch, learning from the cleaning staff. In their place, staff who had been neglected despite their excellence, as well as part-time workers, were promoted to better positions. He placed the right people in the right roles, creating a lively working environment. He actively listened to opinions, quickly implementing good ideas with a sense of urgency. Even as an onlooker, you could feel the overall atmosphere of the hotel improving. And so, he successfully transformed the hotel. By the way, we were able to hold our wedding ceremony at the hotel as initially planned. Of course, it was during a quieter time, and we kept it low-key. About a year later, he handed down the hotel management to a new manager and quickly stepped down. It should be okay now, he said. But it seems the real reason was that he wanted more time to play his favorite video games.
Tom was laboring over fresh test data, a tedious yet essential task for him and his team's month-long effort on the test vehicle. Despite its dullness, he found himself correlating and tabulating the information for analysis. Mid-task, his phone buzzed with a text notification, but he paid little attention to the sender's identity. Only after a pause in his work did he glance away from the screen and notice the alert. Curiosity piqued, he picked up his phone, revealing an unfamiliar number with a local area code. Though tempted to dismiss it as spam, he reconsidered, wondering if it might be a colleague's unregistered cell number. Upon opening the message, his initial confusion turned to shock as he found an explicit image displayed on his screen. It took a moment for him to process the unexpected content, a close-up of a woman's private parts, clearly showing recent ejaculation. Reading the accompanying text, "Look closely. You still have time. Bradley's, 6 p.m. He initially dismissed it as a misdirected attempt at solicitation, finding a hint of amusement in the situation. However, a closer examination of the image revealed a tiny detail that froze him in disbelief: a mole near the woman's private parts, unmistakably belonging to his wife, Tanya. Doubt flooded his mind as he desperately sought to disprove what he saw, but the evidence only strengthened his conviction. Questions raced through his mind as he recalled Tanya's supposed whereabouts, en route to Boston for a crucial work engagement. Yet, here he was, confronted with an image that suggested otherwise. With the clock ticking towards 5:15 p.m., the timing of the message clashed with Tanya's scheduled landing in Boston at 4:30 p.m. Although she typically checked in upon arrival, it seemed plausible that she was preoccupied with her team's arrangements. Despite the whirlwind of emotions, Tom opted to reply to the text first, before considering further action. Not particularly original, but entirely expected. "Who is this? How did you obtain this image? Am I expected to meet you at Bradley's?" As he prepared to wrap up for the day, he made a firm decision to head to "How was your flight? I'm going out for a bite. Give me a call when you're available." He aimed to keep things low-key and gather information discreetly. Walking toward his car, his phone buzzed once more. Assuming it was Tanya, he checked his phone, only to find a response from the mystery sender. "I'll be there, but I'm sure you'll find someone more interesting than me." Feeling overwhelmed, he hurried to his car while checking the map on his phone. Bradley's was 30 minutes away, and it was already 5:40. He'd arrived shortly after 6 p.m., uncertain of the importance of timing, but hoping he wouldn't miss whoever the texter expected him to meet. During the ride, his phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Tanya. "Crazy time with the team. We'll call you later before bed. Love you." He pushed thoughts of their conversation aside. His focus was on his meeting at Bradley's and the mystery surrounding the texter's knowledge of his wife. Arriving at 6:12, his heart raced as he parked. Since the texter hadn't provided any clues about who to look for, he assumed whoever wanted to meet knew him and would approach him. Yet, it was the mention of someone more interesting being present that troubled him most. The texter seemed privy to information he didn't possess, and he feared walking into a trap without any other means of uncovering the truth. The image of his wife's carnal parts left him in turmoil. He trusted her completely, and their closeness was satisfying, or so he thought. But the only explanation for someone possessing such an image was troubling, and he was minutes away from discovering the truth, a prospect that filled him with dread. Stepping inside, he allowed his eyes to adjust to the dim lighting. Unfamiliar with the pub's layout, he paused by the entrance to survey the surroundings. A spacious dining area lay ahead, with a bar to his left. Choosing a seat near the end of the bar, he ordered a draft and scanned the dining area. His attention was drawn to a man who had just taken his drink order and was making his way across the room toward a table of smiling individuals. And there, at the table, receiving a drink from the well-dressed man, sat Tanya, adorned in her little black dress and pearls, her smile radiant. He moved mechanically, advancing toward the table where Tanya sat. Just a couple of steps away, her expression shifted from a warm smile to wide-eyed fear upon seeing him. Undeterred, Tom continued, reaching the table and seizing a handful of the well-dressed man's hair with his left hand. He yanked back forcefully, causing the man to drop his drinks and stumble backward, yelping in pain. As Tom pulled him past, he released his grip, intending to strike him with his right hand. But the man's rapid retreat left Tom out of range, and he landed on the floor before Tom could act further. Taking a step toward him, Tom recognized Pete and sternly warned him to stay down. Pete, disheveled and soaked in drink, obeyed without uttering a word. Turning back to Tanya, Tom noticed the table had fallen silent. Familiar faces stared back at him, members of Tanya's team, who had shared meals and gatherings at his home. He mused that team loyalty outweighed betrayal, except for one individual who had chosen to reveal the truth. Briefly considering identifying them, he dismissed the idea as futile. Tom informed Tanya that he was going home and suggested that if there was any hope for their marriage, she should come with him now. Tanya nodded in response. However, before she could rise, he gestured for her to wait and requested a moment. Before departing, he addressed Betty Wilson and Bob Thornton, seated nearby. He asked Betty if Bill thought she was in Boston, and Bob if Alice believed the same. Their avoidance confirmed his suspicions. He pondered whether the whole team was involved, realizing that at least one of them was. The drive home was a blur, ending abruptly in his driveway. Inside, he grabbed a beer and sank into the living room, contemplating his acquaintances. Familiar with Bill Wilson and Alice Thornton, but unfamiliar with the other couples present. With uncertainty gnawing at him, he debated contacting Bob or Alice, but ultimately decided against it. Instead, he sent them a brief message. "Just heard Tanya's travel plans changed. Might want to touch base." With that, he left the choice of further investigation in their hands, feeling a sense of closure amidst the chaos. It was roughly 20 minutes later when he heard the garage door open and Tanya pull into the garage. He waited in the living room. She entered, still dressed in her LBD, but without the provocative pumps and jewelry. As she calmly walked into the living room and took a seat opposite him on the sofa, he remained quiet, understanding the power of silence in any conversation. He was resolute in allowing the silence to persist for as long as necessary. It didn't take Tanya long to speak up. "It's not what you think," she began, but he gestured for her to stop. "You have no clue what I think about tonight's events," Tom replied. "I don't need a detailed explanation. We're both engineers, and we know that there's no real or objective answer to any why question. It's often just an attempt to justify unfavorable outcomes, so I won't ask why. Let's start with something simpler. How long? How many times? How frequently? Do our friends know, apart from those at the table who cheat? Am I labeled as your betrayed man among your work colleagues and our friends?" "No, Tom, it's not like that at all," Tanya protested. "Our team's travel plans got disrupted, and instead of coming home only to travel again tomorrow, Pete suggested we stay in town for a down day before resuming." "I didn't see the whole team there. Where was everyone else?" Tom inquired. "When we received the news, some of the team chose to stay home one more night and meet us at the airport tomorrow," she admitted. "But you chose to deceive me," he pointed out. "You seemed rather close to Pete. Is there anything happening between the star engineer and the Wunderkind program manager that you'd like to tell me?" "Well, for one, Pete's all right, and he persuaded the owners at Bradley's not to press charges," she said in a positive tone. His eyes widened in utter disbelief at her loyalty. "I couldn't care less about your colleague. If he hadn't tripped, I would have punched him. Whether charges are pressed doesn't faze me. I've spent a night in jail before. It's irrelevant. Besides, it could make for interesting testimony," he added with a half-smile. "Do you love him?" Tanya paused, gathering her thoughts. He could tell she was contemplating. Yes, silence was indeed a powerful tool, and his mind raced to fill the void in their conversation. Again, this didn't seem like it would end well. "He's not my boyfriend. There's absolutely nothing between us. Yes, I should have informed you about the change in plans, but it seemed trivial. Whether I was in town or Boston, you weren't expecting me, and I was still committed to the team. We were simply having dinner before retiring to our rooms. There was no reason for you to act the way you did. You completely embarrassed me in front of my team," she exclaimed, attempting to bluff her way out of the situation. He unlocked his phone, pulled up the text, and pushed it across the coffee table to her. Judging by her expression, he could tell she recalled the picture and the situation, leaving no room for denial. This time, she started speaking without bravado. He retrieved the phone, started a voice recording app, and tucked it into his shirt pocket. "Tom, our team is," she hesitated, searching for words, "very close-knit in many ways. Most of us," she began. "We have a small group that meets regularly. They were all at Bradley's. We were the ones putting in extra effort for the proposal. You know the time I've spent preparing our pitch? I don't know exactly when it began. It was sometime after Pete became PM. We worked closely together, and I was drawn to him, and things just evolved," Tanya explained. "No explanations needed," he interrupted. "Falling into bed doesn't just happen. Decisions are made consciously. We both understand that, so please don't insult me." "So, almost 6 months," he answered one of his questions. "That's when Pete joined, right?" She nodded. "The team," he continued. "All of you." He trailed off without naming it. "I mean, collectively?" She nodded again. "Pete mentioned it fosters trust and team unity. Is that what convinced all of you to form a company coalition group? Now you're being crude. It's more than that. I feel a strong connection to Pete and my team, more than ever," Tanya asserted confidently. He sensed trouble brewing. "Unfortunately, you may see some changes in your team soon," Tom warned. "What did you do?" Tanya gasped. "Tom, involving others will only cause more damage. Let them make their own choices. We need to focus on us. Tanya, I can't stay silent and be complicit. I care about Bob and Alice. In fact, I like them a lot more than Betty and Bill right now," he replied. "I texted them about the changed plans. How they handle it with their spouses is up to them. I can live with my decision." "Tom, we have the most productive team in Cramerica Inc.'s history," she practically yelled at him. "And you benefited too. Just because our team meetings were on Wednesdays didn't mean you missed out. I never denied you access to me whenever you needed it. So, I slept with my team a bit earlier. You never noticed. That picture you showed me, you want to know about it?" She sneered. "That was right after Pete finished inside me. Yes, he came inside your loving wife. What you don't see is Betty. She took the picture just before she went down on me. So now you know you never had seconds or tasted another man's seed. If you don't know, it didn't happen, right?" Tom listened in shock as the extent of the deception and his own ignorance unfolded before him. Now, just because you're aware, just because your fragile ego is bruised, you want to throw away all that my team and I have achieved? Tanya hissed, her anger escalating. Tom could feel his heart rate rising as Tanya passionately defended her team's questionable dynamic. His own anger was growing by the second. For a fleeting moment during his drive home from Bradley's, he entertained the idea that perhaps forgiving Pete just this once could be possible. However, that notion had quickly met its demise. He didn't need to hear any more, and he certainly didn't want to, but Tanya persisted. No, sir, we won't let you off the hook. You're going to text Bob and Alice back, informing them that you heard from me and that we were stranded in Atlanta but have reservations for the morning. That's the story Betty and Bill will stick to, and you're going to support them, damn it, she shouted. There are millions on the line with this deal, and your hurt feelings mean absolutely nothing. Send the text, and then we can discuss our next steps. Discuss our next steps? Tom retorted. There's no discussing it. You're leaving. Now, you and your twisted team, including your ringleader Pete, can carry on however you like. We're finished. I'll be contacting a lawyer this week to get the ball rolling. It's a straightforward 50-50 split. You keep your retirement, and I'll keep mine, Tom declared. But go. You have reservations in town. Use them. Head off to Boston and chalk up another victory for you and your team. Tom, please send those texts, Tanya pleaded, her tone much softer now. If we lose Betty or Bill before the presentation, the company could lose millions. You and I could miss out on tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in commissions and bonuses. Just imagine all the places we could go with that money. Just you and me. Forget about this and reclaim my loyalty. Please, Tom, don't let some irrational concern about meaningless encounters derail us. Pete says I'm on the fast track to executive status. All I have to do is keep delivering results for a few more years. Don't you want that for me? For us? She implored. Tanya, just leave, Tom managed to say before he was struck hard in the back, knocking the wind out of him as he fell to the floor with a knee pressed into his back. Don't hurt him, Tanya interjected. Too much, she added. So, still undecided about breaking my nose? Pete taunted as he leaned in close to Tom's face while Tom lay pinned on the floor. Tanya must have a bug, Tom thought. Now I know whose team she's really on. We'll see whose nose gets broken, Pete smirked. Get his damn phone and type those damn texts for him. We don't have time for this nonsense. Someone pulled him up from the floor. Just one individual. He pretended to be injured, causing the person behind him to exert significant force to assist him to stand. This provided him with necessary information. His captor was a weak office worker, wheezing from the effort to get Tom on his feet. Tom was catching his breath after being taken by surprise and was refocusing on the situation. In contrast to Pete and his team of well-groomed salespeople, Tom's team operated in the field with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, SOAR, based in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, although his group of engineers didn't match their caliber. Spending time with the crews during test missions led to the team being invited to improve their physical condition under the guidance of seasoned workers flown to missions in aircraft modified by Tom's team. If these men appeared at your doorstep, it meant the end of your days on Earth. Tom and his team designed the equipment necessary to access and, more importantly, exit hazardous locations. They took pride in their modifications, contributing to successful missions and the safe return of all involved. The members of the 160th and their formidable passengers deeply appreciated the hard work put in by Tom's crew, with Master Sergeant Troy Baker standing out as the most intimidating figure. MSGT Baker was renowned within his community. Everyone, from recruits to high-ranking officers, showed him the respect he deserved for guiding his men through missions worldwide. He was known for never leaving anyone behind. This reputation was solidified during a mission in Colombia. MSGT Baker instructed the young LT platoon leader to stick close. During their first mission, when the FARC ambushed their group, MSGT Baker thought the LT was performing well for a rookie until he saw him on the ground bleeding from a head wound. The medic reported that he had checked for vitals and mentioned that he was gone top. Baker knelt down and lifted him into a fireman's carry, with the medic reiterating that he was gone top. Baker responded to the medic's observation, stating that it might be true, but he was still coming home with them. The medic looked at him as if he had lost his mind, considering the more than 5-kilometer trek back to the LZ through dense forest. They would be fortunate to return unscathed, but carrying a deceased individual seemed like a risky decision. Anticipating the medic's thoughts, Baker assured him, "I'd do the same for you, Billy. Stay close in case I need you." What ensued became legendary. Upon their return to the base, the medic informed the doctor that the LT had succumbed. The doctor nodded and retrieved a penlight from his pocket. The medic watched in amazement as the dead LT's pupils contracted in the harsh beam of the penlight. The doc then asked the medic if he cared to revise his diagnosis as they hurried the revived LT into surgery. He was timeless. He didn't speak much, but when he did, everyone listened. He was a relic. In an age of convenience and disposability, he was neither. He was meticulously crafted and unique, and he seemed to hold a special regard for Tom and his team. During the extended periods of downtime between missions, the MSGT expressed his gratitude by instructing Tom and the team in some basic yet effective hand-to-hand defensive techniques. He advised the engineers, "It's better to know something, just in case. I understand the biggest threat you're likely to encounter is a malfunctioning copier or a nasty paper cut. But if you remain in this line of work, you may find yourself in some colorful locations. So, now if you happen to encounter one of the local colorful inhabitants, you'll have something practical to rely on," MSGT Baker explained to the group. "But let's hope a paper cut remains the scariest thing you ever have to face." Tom regulated his breathing and allowed himself to appear subdued in the grasp of his captor, while recalling the fighting techniques taught by the MSGT. There might be situations where you feel powerless and can only endure the smacking. It's unfortunate, but it happens. The key is to remember that even when you're taking a smacking, you can still fight back. You just have to outsmart your attacker. Tom remembered the lesson and subtly resisted, gradually wearing down the lone man's strength. "Give me the phone, Tom," Pete demanded, staring him down. "Now you know I've been with your wife and that every guy on the team has had their way with her. Forget this tough guy act, Tom. You're nothing but a weak, submissive nerd. Do as we say, and maybe you'll still have a chance with Tanya when the team isn't using her. Don't forget about all the luxuries you can afford with her bonus. That should ease the pain. Who knows, maybe Tanya will even buy you a cohesion robot for those times when she's busy." Tom bit his tongue as Pete took pleasure in humiliating him and coercing him into compliance. Pete demanded to know where it was, spotting the outline of the phone in Tom's shirt pocket. He then reached for it with his right hand. Tom forcefully stepped back with his right heel, striking his captor's shin and causing him to stumble in pain. Flexing his arms, Tom broke free from the hold as his captor yelped and collapsed under his own weight. Pete's eyes widened in recognition. With his right arm extended straight out, Tom rolled his shoulder as taught by the MSGT, driving his clenched fist into the center of Pete's face with full force. He felt bones shatter beneath his fist as a gush of blood poured from Pete's nose, sending him crashing to the floor. He turned around to identify his assailant. It was Bill, lying on the floor in tears and clutching his leg. He whimpered that he thought his foot was broken. Tom forcefully stomped on his foot, causing Bill to scream in agony. Tom remarked that it should clear up any uncertainty. Turning his attention back, he saw Pete on the floor, hands covering his face, attempting to rise to his knees. Approaching him, Tom leaned in close to his ear and mentioned that it looked like his nose took the punch, adding that he wasn't willing to take one for the team. He then delivered a powerful punch to Pete's temple, knocking him out cold. His adrenaline pumping and breath ragged, Tom scanned the living room for Tanya. Suddenly, he felt a sharp impact to his back and neck. Dropping to one knee, he spun around to confront the new attacker. Tanya stood before him, wielding a cast-iron skillet. Her swing missed, grazing Tom's side. Rising to his feet, he roughly grabbed the pan from her hand. Tanya pleaded with Tom, expressing that they could still salvage the situation. She asked him to consider the money he would be giving up and promised to put an end to the extramarital affairs, vowing to cut them off. She suggested going back to how things were between them. Rubbing the back of his head with his left hand, Tom stared at her, astonished by her sudden transformation. He compared her to the shape-shifting alien in John Carpenter's The Thing, adapting to each new challenge. He smirked at the thought. Misinterpreting his smile as agreement, Tanya moved to embrace Tom. He held her back with his left hand, then, after a brief moment of consideration, swiftly struck her nose with his right hand, fracturing bone but not rendering her unconscious. Tanya cried out and slumped to the floor. Tom remarked that it hurt like hell, describing tears streaming, vision blurred, breathing labored, and blood everywhere, stating that it worked every time. Tanya expressed her distress, questioning Tom's motive for punching her. Tom, unapologetic, explained that he struck her because he had the ability to do so. He continued recording the incident, convinced that he had enough evidence to justify his actions, despite the potential negative portrayal. Reflecting on the advice received from the MSGT about decisive action, Tom surveyed the room, noting Bill's distressed state and Tanya's attempts to stem the bleeding from her nose. In motion while others remained still, Tom acknowledged the success of saving someone, giving credit to the MSGT. Discussing the aftermath, Tom expressed frustration about the consequences for Lover Boy and Mr. Bill, lamenting the missed opportunities and potential financial losses. He contemplated the implications of involving the police, deciding to delay the call to maintain his chance to question Tanya. Kneeling beside her, Tom demonstrated how to address her nosebleed, but as the adrenaline subsided, he felt a sudden loss of energy, sitting across from the woman he thought he knew. Questioning her actions, Tom wondered about the true extent of Tanya's deception, expressing disappointment in the betrayal. He inquired about her aspirations, specifically regarding her ambition to become a vice president. Tanya admitted that it could have been worthwhile if Tom had gone along with her plans, expressing regret for the setback caused by the incident. Tom pressed further, questioning the future of their relationship and the persistence of deceit, to which Tanya acknowledged the possibility and the potential continuation of dishonesty. Tom discovered from Tanya that Pete had warned her about his rigid ethics and idealistic views, advising her to break free from his influence to achieve success. In response to Tom's question about when Pete conveyed this advice, Tanya retorted, insinuating his lack of knowledge about certain aspects of her relationship with Pete. Despite Tom's silence, Tanya continued, sharing her perspective on career advancement. She revealed that adhering to Tom's suggestions for career enhancement yielded only a few commendations, and it wasn't until Betty offered guidance that she learned what truly worked for women in the workplace. Tanya asserted that engaging in carnal relationships for career advancement was not only effective, but also more enjoyable. Tom, still recording the conversation, processed this information. Curious about the timeline of Tanya's actions, Tom inquired if her involvement in such activities began before Pete entered the picture. Tanya, expressing impatience with Tom's comprehension, disclosed that she initiated such actions at the company's Christmas party a year after joining Cramerica, emphasizing her commitment to this approach ever since. "Wait, you're sleeping with the boss too? Art? Art Vandelay?" Tom asked incredulously. "Yes, Tom, Art, Pete, Bill. Anyone on the team who could help advance my career. It doesn't cost me anything to share some closeness, and it's easy to manipulate you men when I can lead you around by your desires, especially you. Show a bit of cleavage, and I could guide you wherever I needed," she stated. "Even now, thinking you have it all figured out. We informed Art of our location when we headed here. Right now he's gathering the rest of the team, crafting a cover story for our absence. They'll have to make the pitch without us, but the extra effort with their purchasing managers should pay off." "Do I really want to hear this?" he wondered. "Oh, what the heck, why not?" "Extra effort?" Tom prodded. "You always were a go-getter, Tanya." "It was so easy. I hate to even call it effort," she laughed. "What's the old joke? The worst closeness I ever had was great? At the bidders conference, it was straightforward with the men. We had to get a bit more creative with Brenda, the token woman on the selection board. It's funny, I can even seduce a woman, but I did throw in old Pete over there as the kicker. She was situationally bi-curious. As I recall, her situation cleared up about the same time my tongue began lapping at her. With promises of more to come when we started working together after the contract award, yeah, we have the selection board covered." "Why all this then? I mean, if it's all set up, why the strong-arm tactics?" Tom asked. "That was Pete's idea, the idiot. I told him to cool off, that I would come home and please you and be back in time to catch the flight, but he had to go all alpha. Look what that got us. So now, instead of being the face of the winning team, I'm back to dealing with Art. Like I said, fixable, but it will set me back. You wouldn't have bought me so cheap, he said. Maybe not, Tanya replied, but I still would have made the flight. Well, you sure as hell ain't making that flight now, he declared. Remembering how Pete seemed so clued in, he figured Tanya must have a transmitter. Art, are you listening? I'm about to call the cops. I'm sure there's a handful of felonies involved here, and we haven't even begun to go down the rabbit trail of fraud. That's a federal contract, isn't it, Tanya? Tom asked rhetorically. Yeah, the feds take a dim view of how, did you phrase it, extra effort? I'm sure you have great lawyers and all, Art, but maybe there's an alternative? He let it hang. A moment later, Tanya's cell phone ringtone played, Hail to the Chief. Art? She asked into the phone. Of course. I'll put you on speaker. Tom? Art's voice came through the speaker. First, let me apologize to you. Pete's actions were a gross lapse of judgment. I can assure you the board will deal with him assertively. Thank you, Art. That eases my mind. Glad to see that you and the board take assault and fraud seriously. Tom, these are all unfortunate allegations. Lawyers will profit, but nobody wants to rock the boat. We might pay a fine, Pete and Bill get community service, but ultimately, you'll be divorced and half as wealthy, Art explained in a businesslike manner. Do I detect an OR in this story, Art? Tom inquired. Tanya always said you were the cleverer of the two. Still, I'm happier to have hired Tanya. Yes, Tom, there most decidedly is an OR, Art continued. Tom, we, Kramerica, have displaced you in your wife's affections, and when you found out and questioned it, you were treated most shabbily. Most shabby. Shocking, Tom chimed in. Tom, Art continued, instead of calling the cops, as you put it, suppose we could come to an agreement. I just sent a snap to Tanya's phone, not me, one of my tech boys here. They tell me they disappear after viewing. Have a peek. Perhaps that might restore some goodwill. Tanya opened the snap and turned the phone to Tom. He saw the words, Bank of Grand Cayman, and a number. A very large number. And when would that be deposited? Tom asked. It's already there, Tom. You have an email with the account number. This has been a very bad day for you, Tom. This may be a hard decision for you to make, and I don't discount the emotion. Tanya is a very desirable woman. Be that as it may, however, one can't take emotion to the bank, can one? One can't, Tom agreed, affecting Art's upper-crust clipped manner of speech. Kramerica will cover the costs of your divorce. You can never reconcile. I think we all recognize that. Tanya will file. She will ask for her personal belongings and her retirement. He thought for a moment before replying. On the one hand, he could stand on principle and expose the whole sordid mess and let the chips fall. On the other hand, he could just walk away. Art had just given him 5 million reasons to do just that. Does Kramerica have a medical staff, Art? Tom asked. Yes, Tom. I believe we have some physicians on retainer, Art replied. Good, Tom said. You better load a few into a limo and send them over here to pick up your team. Are we in agreement then? Art asked. Tanya who? Tom replied. Precisely, Art agreed. Are we done, Tom? Art asked. Goodbye, Art, Tom said and ended the call. Tom put his phone away, turned off the recording app, and slipped it back into his pocket. I knew you would see it our way, Tom. We can still be friends with benefits when this is all over. She summoned up what she thought was her most winning smile, but even her incandescent smile couldn't reverse the effects of her ruined nose. Her eyes were turning black, and the blood was crusted under her nose, dried drips down to her chin. Tom found the sight comical and allowed himself a smile. Once again, Tanya misread his smile for agreement and leaned in to kiss him. Tom extended his right hand to halt Tanya, using it to gently push her back until she landed on the couch with a thud. Expressing disdain, he questioned the notion of wanting to kiss her, leaving Tanya hurt and looking up at him. Declaring his decision, Tom insisted that she remove whatever she wanted by the next day. Walking toward the door, he stopped beside Bill, inquiring about his injured foot. Dismissive of Bill's complaints, Tom kicked him in the groin, causing Bill to curl up and moan. Approaching Pete, who had managed to sit up, Tom assured him he wouldn't physically damage him. Pete, relieved, smiled, but it quickly vanished when Tom's foot applied pressure to Pete's groin. Rolling onto his side in pain, Pete watched as Tom exited the room. He got into his car, unsure where he was going, but food and shelter were high on the hierarchy of needs scale for a good reason. He grabbed a burger from a takeout place, checked into a Red Roof Inn just outside of town near the freeway, and fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. Despite enduring numerous physical strains from various injuries, he rose early the following morning and reluctantly got out of bed. While preparing motel room coffee, his phone chimed, and he eagerly grabbed it. The text message came from the number, and he opened it promptly. "Sorry for yesterday. I can meet. TGIF at the mall, noonish. I'll wave you over to seats at the bar." "I'll be there," he replied, and poured the lukewarm brown water from the coffee maker carafe into the paper cup. With determination, he set up his laptop, gearing up for some online banking. Reflecting on his college days, a time predating his relationship with Tanya, Tom recalled his economics professor's advice to maintain an offshore account for unforeseen circumstances. With his professor's assistance, he established a bank account in the Cayman Islands, which he fondly referred to as his go-to-hell fund. Over the past decade, he diligently contributed to it, and now he boasted an impressive sum of close to $50,000. Tom felt a sense of pride knowing that his go-to-hell fund was about to receive a significant boost. Tom accessed the secure website for each bank. With his passcode and several keystrokes, he transferred the bulk of Comerica's payment into his personal account, leaving $100,000 in the original account. After a shower, a change, and getting ready, he headed out to meet the mystery texter. Tom entered TGIF just past noon. As he entered, he noticed a man waving him over. The man appeared to be about Tom's age, well-dressed and handsome. Tom approached him. "I believe you sent me a text," Tom said as he sat down. "I'm sorry for how it turned out. I don't know if there was any clean way to tell you," the stranger began. "Why don't you start with who you are and your connection to Tanya?" Tom replied. "I was on the team. I left the Army after 8 years, wounded in action, and had a lengthy recovery before being medically discharged. I joined Comerica about 6 months ago and was assigned to Pete's team around 3 months ago. While talking to a friend about the job, I mentioned working for Tanya. When he asked for her full name, we realized we had a mutual friend, and he asked me to watch out for Tanya as a favor. At first, everything was great. I was warmly welcomed to the team. It didn't take long to find out why," he started. "About 2 months in, Tanya approached me. She is extremely attractive and, compelling. But when I asked her about her ring, she just smiled and told me you were okay with it. I wasn't and said so. That started the deep freeze. After I turned her down, I got all the undesirable assignments and nothing but grief from Pete. I called our mutual friend back and told him about Tanya approaching me. He told me about you and thought that pimping your wife for pay seemed out of character for the man he knew. He believed there was more to it than Tanya let on and that you needed to know. Pete sent me the pic when they were trying to get me on board with the team, kind of a prize I could expect if I went along. Let's just say I don't agree with their methods. I resigned yesterday and sent you the text." "Our friend?" Tom asked. "Troy Baker. If I hadn't met Troy," he replied, then paused a moment before continuing. "Let's just say he helped me out of a scrape when I was a green LT. I owe him a favor or two." "Don't we both?" Tom agreed. "What are you going to do?" the stranger asked. "Art pretty much laid it all out for me. I could get the cops involved, and yes, Bill, Pete, and even Tanya would face legal problems. But with his lawyers, it would all end up as a bump in the road. We made a deal. You might think I'm selling out, and maybe you're right in a way. But they stole the only thing I had that was irreplaceable. If I can't make them pay legally, well, at least I can make them pay. It won't bring Tanya back, but I think I may find she's less irreplaceable than I thought. I have a trip planned. Tell Troy thanks for everything. I won't be going back to work. What about you?" Tom asked finally. "Well, Troy always spoke highly of Baxter Inc. Now that you're gone, they might just need another engineer. I think you'll find they do business a bit differently at Baxter, maybe more to your liking. Challenging, but the fringe benefits won't compare to what Tanya's team was offering," Tom smiled. Expressing his acceptance of the arrangement, the stranger stood up, prompting Tom to do the same. With a simple nod to each other, they left without exchanging any further words. Fast forward to Monday, Tom had just completed the check-in process for his flight to Costa Rica. As he contemplated the upcoming relaxation in Tamarindo, he headed towards security. Spotting a mailbox, he pulled out an envelope from his pocket addressed to the DOJ in Washington, D.C. Containing a thumb drive with the recording, he thought it might pique their interest. Considering the possibility that Art's legal team might not be as formidable as assumed, Tom dropped the envelope into the box before proceeding into the security line. Update. 9 months later, seated at his usual table in the cafe, Tom received mail from Anna, who brought him his cerveza. "Thank you, dear," he said, raising the bottle to his lips. Holding the envelope, he wondered who had found him. Not going to great lengths to stay hidden, finding him in a little town on the Pacific coast of northern Costa Rica would have required resources beyond the ordinary guy's reach. His first thought was that Art's people had found him. Letting the envelope sit at his house for 2 days, he was fairly certain it wasn't a bomb, yet you can't be too careful. "Carlos," Tom called out to the cafe owner. "Tienes tus cuchillo?" "Sí, Señor Tom." Tom handed over the envelope and stepped back a few paces. Can never be too careful, he thought as Carlos cut open the envelope. He handed it to Tom, who thanked him, took another pull from his beer bottle, and turned the envelope over. Several sheets of paper fell onto the table, picking up a note that said, "Thought you would find this interesting," along with a phone number. The number, Tom thought, Troy would have the resources to find him. I can live with that. Flipping the other piece of paper over, he found a copy of a newspaper article with a picture. The photo depicted Pete, Bill, Tanya, and Betty being led out of the Cromerica building in handcuffs. The headline for the article read, "4 indicted in multi-million-dollar procurement fraud." He smiled. Maybe Art's lawyers aren't everything he thought they were, he said to himself, a habit he picked up since his Spanish was weak and English wasn't widely spoken. He liked to hear English conversation even if it was just him talking to himself. "Ana, otra cerveza, por favor," he said, holding up his empty bottle. "Sí, Mr. Tom." "Gracias, Ana," he said as he accepted his beer, took a swallow, and looked out at the deep blue Pacific. "Tanya who?"